Yeah, Frank here has got his own billiard room.
Yes, it's what do you call it, Kramer?
Billiard room.
No, not billiard, not the billiards. It was
billiards room.
Come on already. Come on, we call it the
place to be.
The place to be. Yes, the place to be.
Then I shall be there.
Now, it's time. Live and in living color.
The Grandy Man can.
Time to play the game!
Well, you always left me satisfied and smiling, so...
That's what she said.
Why do I want this? I want to make bank, bro. I want to get ass. I want to drive a Range Rover.
Place to be Nation, Scott Criscola and Justin Rosero. This is the Place to Be Podcast.
Very nice, Mr. Criscola.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis.
Isn't that what I just said? What is wrong with you?
Is it the Pelicans? I didn't know it was the Pelicans.
Oh,
I know nothing about the word Pelicans.
Yes.
I work during the fucking day, okay?
And so then I'm doing this, and then he touches me, and I swear to God, this is going to sound, this is probably one of those you want to pull out the audio for your promo. He touches me with his voodoo stick.
Until you fancy to make a decision, Scott's stuck twisting in the wind, a pawn in your sick, cruel game of vacation domination. I don't know what the fuck the Department of Health is. I think this whole thing's a load of horseshit, Matt.
To do worse than Josh Richard.
Place to Be Nation, welcome back to another episode of the one and only Place to Be podcast. I am your co-host, Justin Rosero, and joining me, as always, is my one and only Mr. PIC, Mr. Scott Criscola. Scott, how you doing?
Good evening, JR. Good evening, PTB Nation, to episode 216 of the Place to Be podcast. And let's just say that, obviously, tonight's topic was unavoidable, but like we did with our written review, we're going to do it as best we can.
Yeah, and before we get to that, though, Scott, I did want to mention something, because it did come up quite a bit on the Facebook page and whatnot, that you do have a new microphone.
Yes, I do have a new microphone.
I had some people asking. They said you sounded better, so it sounded like we were in the same room, and I was just getting a bunch of questions about it, so I figured I'd just kind of cut those off and bring it up here and let everyone know, yes, we are now operating as equals. And I think it's a good thing. Next step in the evolution of the Place to Be.
Yes, exactly. Now, I mean, for pretty much the last, 160 episodes of the Place to Be podcast, I was using a typical, simple, plug-in headset with a mic connected to it, and it sounded, good some days and not so great others. But I thank my PIC for on my 387th birthday.
That's a big one. I had to give you something special.
Yes, exactly. You gave me the same mic you have, and I very much appreciate that, you and the family. And so we sound. It's been great. We've been able to tweak it, and the best thing I like about this piece of equipment, JR, is that it kind of calibrates itself, which I like. We used to remember that we had those stretches of episodes where I keep playing with the stupid headset, and the mic was too loud. But then the next week you couldn't hear me, and it was a mess. But this thing is a fine piece of machinery. So thank you, PTB Nation, for noticing that. And
yes,
we've taken the next step. Taken the next step technically.
And also wanted to mention, because I can't remember, I think we talked about the story, but I don't know if we mentioned the resolution. Part of WrestleMania weekend, of course, Mr. Grant Owens, in his inebriated state, misplaced his iPad. Became quite the search over that night in the ensuing week. A couple weeks later, we get a message from the one and only Mr. David Crisafi on the Facebook page. He found it.
Yes.
Yes, the Grill Master. He found it on top of his van. His wife, I believe his wife tracked it down. Now, this thing rode back from Jersey to Virginia.
See, I was about to ask you that. I thought maybe he found it that night.
No.
And then didn't. It actually stayed on the car.
It was on top of the car through rain, wind, highway, back road.
What the hell?
And it was still had a good charge to it and still worked perfectly fine. So, quite the piece of equipment created there by Apple. And Grant Owens very lucky. The Crisafis have since mailed it back to him. And everything ended well. So
it was kind of like it was kind of like WrestleMania 29 turned into like SummerSlam 94, except we didn't have the Leslie Nielsen
Yes.
iPad updates.
Yeah, we had to. We should have done some updates, but quite the story there. I thought we'd share
Yes.
because I don't think we had talked about the resolution to that mystery on air yet. So, Mr. Krisafi, nice work by Mrs. Krisafi as well, tracking down the iPad. And Grant, fucking pay attention next time.
Exactly. Maybe you should ease back on the libations. All right. But a good capper to what, of course, was. It seems like it was eons ago, but it was only, a few weekends ago.
We were in New York this weekend. I was there with my wife, and I was just every kind of time I'd pass something or reminisce. It was a weekend of flashbacks for me. Just kind of thinking, and I probably bored her because I think I kept telling her millions of stories. Oh yeah, when this and this and that and this, and yeah, I don't know how I even made it to New York without Anthony guiding me. I can say that much. I don't know how I don't know how I survived without that savant guiding me to
exactly
the promised land.
We had to hear about we heard about the inner workings of how to do a wake and a funeral. So.
Yes, and a job hunt all in one.
Yes.
Maybe you should get a job at a funeral home. Has you thought about that?
Trust me, we've mentioned that.
He fits right in.
Oh God.
Have
All
dead
right.
anyway.
Okay. All right. So anyway, that's there you go. Grant Owens got his iPad, and Mr. Krisafi, you were one of the MVPs of WrestleMania.
Yeah, poor guy who made him work the whole day, and then he has to go ship this back to Grant.
Yes. So all right. Tonight, it is Vintage Vault evening, and for those that remembered the last pay-per-view we did, you all know what this one is.
Yep.
And we'll just dive right in. No belting, no bells and whistles, nothing. Tonight on the Place to Be podcast, inside the Vintage Vault, it is, yes, indeed, Over the Edge, 1999.
Yeah, we wanted to do this show because just to keep the completest nature of our Vintage Vaults, and also because things do happen leading up to this show, part of storyline that we'll build to the next month. And we did get a lot of requests to do this both in written form and on the podcast. So I didn't see any reason to skip it, Scott. I mean, everyone knows what happened that night. We're going to talk about it. This podcast is going to take on a slightly different feel. Like you said, not a lot of the bells and whistles, really. We're going to talk about the builds to the matches. We're going to talk about the result of the matches. We're not going to really, obviously, get into or criticize match quality in any way.
No.
And then we'll talk about what was going on behind the scenes and then brought to you on camera. We'll talk about kind of our reaction watching live at the time, and as well as, kind of what coulda, shoulda kind of stuff. So what were you doing on this night, Scott? Where were you watching the show?
I was, of course, at our friend Mike's house, the purveyor of GetThePointRadio.com, as I always was throughout the Attitude Era. And a typical normal night, JR, I'm assuming you were in Worcester.
I was not. I was home.
Oh.
I believe I was done by May 23rd. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, end of the year.
I think I just got home because I remember watching this with Adam at my parents' house. So I was definitely, the two of us were watching this one together. So I feel like we may have just gotten home like that week.
Yes. Yeah, most likely. Yeah. And I was actually looking forward to the show. As we saw after Backlash, storylines were getting very exciting.
Yeah, me too. Because at this point I wasn't seeing a lot of pay-per-views outside of Valentine's Day Massacre. I hadn't seen many live really since, Fully Loaded, because I didn't see SummerSlam, Breakdown, Judgment Day, Survivor. I didn't see any of those live.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is really only the second one since Fully Loaded 98, since I left for college, that I saw live. So I was definitely looking forward to that piece of it.
Yeah, and the storylines were getting a little interesting. And, talking about Vince and his half face turn, and Shane's growing influence, and obviously, The Undertaker and all that. We're going to have to talk about that as well, because a big thing happened between Backlash and now that we do have to discuss.
Yeah.
So let's hop right in.
Sure.
May 23rd, 1999. Live from Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri. Your crowd, an awesome one. Good size. 18,244. Your buy rate, 1.1. Always good. And the voices of the Attitude Era, Jim Ross, and of course, Jerry the King Lawler. Little cosmetic change, JR, we need to discuss. This is the first secondary pay-per-view without the In Your House tag. The official term In Your House is gone from pay-per-view lexicon after Backlash. So we do have, and we have it documented this time around, there were 3 Sunday Night Heat matches. JR, why don't you let us know what they are?
They were Meat. Okay, we haven't talked about it yet, but portrayed by Sean Stasiak. I think we'll get to him eventually here on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Defeated Brian Christopher. The Hardy Boys defeated Goldust and the Blue Meanie, still tinkering around here. I believe it was very shortly after this they were both gone. And Midian defeated Vince McMahon, so that's an odd.
Well, we'll explain. There. We'll explain why.
Yes.
Later on in the show, if you hadn't remembered, there's a reason for that match. It does look weird, but we'll explain a little bit later on. All right, let's dive right into the first match. Our first title match of the evening. There were a couple. Well, there were supposed to be 3. There were supposed to be, 4, and there would be only 3. But here's your first one. The World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championships on the line. Your champions, the plucky X-Pac and the Big Red Monster Kane, taking on the team, former Nation members, and still kind of paired together.
Yep.
D'Lo Brown and Mark Henry, who was wrestling with black khakis and a belt. And
he was hurting at this point. I think he had a pretty bad knee injury. So I'm guessing that outfit, I mean, it's playing into the whole sexual chocolate thing. We were supposed to be all suave. But I think part of it as well is that his knee was maybe they were hiding the knee brace under the khakis. But I do know it wasn't long after this that he was actually, or he just come back from the knee injury. Now I might be getting things confused because I know they did the knee injury thing with the guitar. Maybe had he just come back? Do you know, Scott?
I think he did, because otherwise, why wouldn't it have been the two of them against?
I think you're right. I think I'm mixing it up. I think it was St. Valentine's Day Massacre where he got hurt.
Yeah,
with the
they hit him. They did the whole D'Lo test thing.
Yeah.
At WrestleMania.
No, they hit him in the knee with the guitar to take him out.
Yep. So of course, as we know,
then it's just a stupid costume.
Yeah. As we mentioned, X-Pac and Kane won the belts the night after WrestleMania when they stunned the hot team of Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett. X-Pac's second taste of tag team gold, of course, the last time was another one of big upsets, one of my PIC's favorite matches of all time, and that was when he and Bob Holly, who we'll see a little bit later on, defeated Bam Bam Bigelow and Tatanka at the 1995 Royal Rumble.
And we've talked about X-Pac and Kane. Obviously, had won the tag titles on the Raw shortly after Mania, correct?
What, they won the titles back?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yep, it was the night after WrestleMania. Yep.
So, no, 2 nights, 2 weeks. Remember we talked about that?
Oh yeah, 2 weeks. I'm sorry, 2 weeks after WrestleMania. Yep.
Okay, so they are your tag champs, still rolling along. D'Lo and Henry. What did you think of them as a unit? I mean, I still like them at this point. I thought they had good chemistry together, even though, as you said, Henry kind of had the weird outfit, was doing all the sexual chocolate stuff. I thought they still had pretty good chemistry.
Yeah, I agree. I think they had chemistry even back as far back as mid-'98 when they were like pretty much the two Nation guys kind of hung out to dry and really had nothing to do. I thought they had perfect chemistry together. And I like this match, actually. It was pretty
I don't know if they were supposed to be heels or faces. That was kind of confusing, too, but I guess at this time it didn't really matter, as we've talked about.
I mean, the D'Lo's, watching, I was kind of going through this show again today, and the D'Lo sucks chants were quite prevalent. So, they were definitely heels here. Okay. Kane was crazy over.
Oh, yeah, this might be, I think it's definitely Xbox's most popular time period, and I do believe Kane's as well. It's pretty up there. They were red hot right now. Yeah. And D'Lo and Henry had actually attacked the tag champs on the 510 Raw after Billy Gunn and Kane had a singles match. Mark Henry and D'Lo attacked, and I think that's kind of what set this up. And these two teams were involved in a 6-man tag the next week, ended in a no contest. Those are just kind of the two things that led into the show. But the match is okay. And, this match occurred, obviously, before anything that we're going to get into went down. So can be judged, I guess, on its own merit. But yeah, X-Pac and Kane retain. Kane hits a chokeslam on Henry. So pretty standard fare, clean finish here. Henry and D'Lo kind of taper away from the tag division now. Kane and X-Pac, did you feel like they're almost becoming, I don't want to say above the tag division, but they're definitely starting to seem pretty dominant?
Well, as we'll see later on in the night with one of the other matches, what was a babyface tag team was actually one of the... now they become probably the standard-bearing team in the tag division, and pretty much have taken that top spot, while this other team, which we'll discuss later, no longer existed. So definitely, I think they definitely got the niche with the crowd, that's for sure. And this match was very well booked, and pretty much put them at a very high level in the tag division, because now we're at a point where the tag division's a little shaky. Not a lot of teams now. because two teams have now broken up, one on the heel side, one on the face side. And so X-Pac and Kane have pretty much stood alone now as the dominant tag team this year. And as you see, as the year progresses, the tag division doesn't really shore up for a few months. Maybe
no, it's kind of a weird mix where it's one of those years where the tag titles, almost like '98 as well. Tag titles are kind of dominated by upper card and main event players in the mix.
Right. Yep.
But this is a little bit different because for once we don't have like the world title guys involved in the world title feud mixed in with the tag titles. It's mainly still guys that are just kind of outside that picture. But I really liked the X-Pac Kane. I liked how they had X-Pac kind of humanizing Kane around this time. They're doing a lot with that. He was trying to get him to speak, and he ripped the voice box out of his hand and made him speak on his own, and that was like a huge moment.
Yep. And
Kane was really starting to show feelings for X-Pac as a friend, because he hadn't really had a true friend since he's come in. He's always been kind of used and abused, whether it's by Paul Bearer or by Undertaker, by Vince.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So for the first time, he's really got a buddy. And, it's amazing to think that X-Pac was only 26 here in 1999. I mean, that is crazy. That means he's only, 40?
Now he's
40? I mean, God, he's been around forever.
Yeah. I mean, you figure, my God, he was college years when he was a pro. Yeah. I mean, think about it. When you always talk about when we've been on with both Kevin and with Scott Hudson about Global and even Christopher Daniels. What was he there, like 18?
Yeah, he had to be. Because, I mean, that was like 92, 90. I mean, he made his Raw debut in 93. I think he was only really around for about a year before that. But
yeah.
I
mean, that's crazy.
Yep.
So he's had a lot of seasoning at this point, and he's almost the veteran to Kane. At least that's what it was perceived on camera. So I agree. To answer your question, they've definitely become standard bearers now. The crowd loves them, and right now the tag division continues to be slightly unstable. And now with two major teams not in the mix, one on the heel side, and one on the face side, that they really have to carry the torch. And they've done a good job. And again, this was a good match. Very exciting. Jerry and JR were very into it. Crowd was into it. Kane gets the win. Chokeslams Mark Henry, which was no small feat, and they show it in the replay. He got up pretty high and dropped him for the win. So X-Pac and Kane retain the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championships in a pretty good match. In a pretty good match. The crowd was hot. Good Midwest crowd was hot and ready to rock and roll. So there you go. Anything else? What'd you think of D'Lo's progression as a wrestler at this point? We talked about it a lot at the end of '98. Yeah,
I think he was starting to hit his stride. I feel like '98 was kind of his breakout to show that he could work as a singles guy. And I think here in '99, as we'll see as the summer go, is where he really stepped up to being a reliable mid to upper mid card guy that could really hold one of the top titles. And he was getting himself over. He really was.
Yeah. So there you go. X-Pac and Kane retain the tag team championships. Backstage, Michael Cole settling in with his little goatee as Mr. Backstage guy, along with our man Kevin Kelly, telling us that Vince McMahon injured his ankle on Heat with Midian, and we just talked about that, and may not co-referee our main event later on in the night. Do you want to get into the whole story now, or do you want to?
No, we'll save it. But that was the plan. Was he was supposed to be one of the referees for this match, and of course the corporate ministry attacked Vince and busted his ankle.
Yes. Well, we'll explain how he got into this, because you're wondering, Vince in a match on Heat?
Yeah.
We'll get into that later.
And who the hell's the corporate ministry?
Who are those guys? Who's the corporation and the Ministry of Darkness?
Yeah.
They're against each other, right? Or maybe they're not. We'll get to that in a minute.
All right, match number 2. Scott, set us up here.
It is our second title match of the evening, the World Wrestling Federation Hardcore titles. And this is one of the times where monotony was fine.
Yeah.
For the 4th consecutive month, dating back to February at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in Memphis, Al Snow and Hardcore Holly are in a hardcore match. This is the 3rd of the 4 that they've been alone. Of course, Billy Gunn was with them at WrestleMania. But Hardcore Holly won the vacant title in February, retained it in the triple threat at WrestleMania with Billy Gunn, and then Al Snow finally tasted gold and defeated Hardcore Holly in your home office, JR, at Backlash. So here we go. For the 4th straight month, the two guys that have... and I think this was smart, because the hardcore division, now that Mick Foley was kind of transitioned out of it, the the hardcore division needed some stability, and these two guys definitely brought it. So for the fourth straight month, World Wrestling Federation Hardcore Championship between Al Snow and Hardcore Holly.
And not a lot of just kind of perusing our notes and Graham's. Not a ton of build leading to this, but Al Snow did have a new friend now, with Head kind of taking a backseat to Pierre, his moose head or deer head that he carried around.
It's a deer head, yeah.
Yeah, stuffed deer head. And Holly destroyed Pierre a couple weeks before this match.
Yes, and Pierre came out like with one eyeball and bandages on it, and it was actually...
Snow had the shirt, the hardcore reindeer Pierre shirt on.
Yes, yeah. So again, these guys were great, brawled, battled in the ring, went outside, went out to the back. I think they hit each other with popcorn and the usual fare.
Yeah, went to the bathroom.
Went to the bathroom. You were big, going back to our reviews in the end of '98. We've been documenting Al Snow. Had he? I mean, his pops are almost like Kane's.
Yeah. The problem with Snow, though, and this is kind of a criticism we've seen of him in the past. I'm curious your take on it. Do you feel like his overness ended with the bell? Like, do you feel like he was over, the gimmick was over, but no one ever really got too into the matches of Snow? Like, they didn't care, really.
I don't think that would take effect till later on in the year. Right now, though, I think he's very entertaining with his imaginary friends. I love the promo that Holly cuts before the match, where he says, "I had imaginary friends and they weren't held accountable, so yours isn't going to be held accountable either," and that kind of thing. And I think for now, I think Al Snow still, both match-wise and character-wise, was still hot. I don't think the whole nobody cared about his matches thing came into effect till later on in the year.
Okay.
That's when I think he really, and we'll get into some of those other matches, some of the more comical ones that have been parodied and mimicked and mocked often towards the end of 1999. At the moment, though, I still think the matches are fine, and I still think his character's solid. The fact that I would have been more upset if Head took a backseat and he had no secondary imaginary friend and just became like regular Al Snow. Then I would be like, oh well, they gave up on that quick. Now he's just some dude. But the fact that they actually took the time and effort to give him another imaginary friend proves to me that I think his character still had some worth. Well,
yeah, his character did. I'm just saying it seems like everyone loved the Head and the Snow music and dancing and shit, and then the matches started and the fans kind of tapered off and didn't
in this
seem
case,
to be too. I mean, you even put it in your comments here that the crowd got quiet in the middle and then kind of picked up towards the end. So
yeah, I think a lot of it was they went backstage, and anytime you go backstage,
you think it just went too long at 13 minutes?
13 minutes is a bit long. I'm trying to think back. I don't even think either of their matches. I think maybe the Massacre match went a little longer. But hardcore matches, particularly the contestants or the combatants, hardcore matches can't be longer than 10 minutes. They need to be quick. They need to be aggressive. They need to have memorable spots, and then they end.
Well, Backlash was actually longer than this. Backlash was 15 and a half minutes.
Wow. Well, that one I think was more dramatic because it was Snow's big win. I don't think it needed to be this long again. Because the whole thing was Al Snow chasing the title and Holly just being one step ahead of him.
Valentine's Day was just under 10.
Okay. Now see, that one, I mean, the title was vacant. So, and they had some good spots outside, remember, with the pylon or with the pallets and the water and all that jazz. And then you had Gun to the Mix at WrestleMania. And then Backlash, Al Snow finally wins. Maybe the couple extra minutes kind of add some build. This one could have gone back to like 9.5 minutes or 10 minutes, particularly with Snow retaining. Hardcore matches needed to be 10 minutes, no more. Unless it's WrestleMania or something. It all depends on the combat. Again,
it just drags on a little bit too much. I mean, they probably could have ended it a little bit quicker instead of dragging it out in the ring. So Snow wins with the powerbomb through the table. And he's, again, like we said, he's really become the torchbearer of the hardcore division, really kind of become the man. They're building it around him. They've given him the belt now, and he's maintained it here over the last month and continuing to build. And we'll see that Holly kind of gets filtered off to a new direction for a little bit, and we get another guy mixed back into the division. But for now, Holly is former champ, and Snow is kind of the man in the hardcore division.
Yes. Yeah. So Al Snow, we have our second straight title match and our second straight retaining as Al Snow still the World Wrestling Federation hardcore champion with a big win over Hardcore Holly but maybe a little too long. Okay. At this point, they talk a little bit longer, and I remember this very well because I just watched it today. Up came the graphic for our next match, which was supposed to be The Godfather defending the World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Championship, 3 straight title matches to start, against the Blue Blazer. Now, just as we were getting out of the graphic and starting the promo package, JR sounds a little kind of half out of it, like he's not finishing his sentences. And he says, he pauses for a minute and he says, wait a minute, something's very wrong here. And then we go to the promo package. We come back to that. We have a shot of the crowd, and JR says, here's an interview earlier on with the Blue Blazer on his big title match with the Godfather. Go to another piece, and our guy Kevin Kelly, and we're looking forward to talking to him in a couple weeks about this. He's interviewing the Blue Blazer, and he does the whole, everything decent in this world, and, take your vitamins, work out, and drink your milk. And everything seemed normal. I remember watching it with everybody. Dr. G was there, his lovely then girlfriend, now wife, and a bunch of big Mike from our, and everybody else, and it was normal. Okay, JR did seem a little off. We're wondering what something very wrong here, and I'm like, what does that mean? It's weird, but we didn't think anything of it. We go back to the crowd, and the crowd is very hushed, very hushed. And JR starts going on this thing about, we all know this is entertainment and we're all here to have fun and everything is scripted. But what I just saw was not scripted. And they say that the Blue Blazer, of course, Owen Hart, was supposed to come down from the rafters in a superhero-esque, manner. Which, by the way, JR, I didn't know this. There's a small clip on the promo piece where he must have done it before. Because you see him coming down, unless it happened, maybe, I don't know, they're using 1989 clips, I don't know, but there is a 2-second shot, if you watch it, of a past moment where Blue Blazer was on some...
Yeah, he did do it. It was, I read about it today. Hang on one second. Because they said it was kind of like they had done it in the past. It was a practice run. It was a while ago. It was like in late 98.
Right.
It was... Damn it. That's right. I'll find it. I was just reading about it today. I was preparing.
You look out.
Right here, November '98 episode of Heat. They successfully tested the entrance and it worked.
Okay. So JR says, this is all, Owen Hart was supposed to do this superhero-esque jump with a harness and a thing off of the scaffolding here at Kemp Arena down to the ring for a big special entrance. Then the Godfather was supposed to come out. And we were supposed to have an Intercontinental title match. Something went horribly wrong, and JR says that Owen Hart fell. Something happened with the scaffolding, and he fell 80 feet to the ring. He says the EMTs are out there. They got there quick. He goes, "That's why we're not showing the ring." They switch back and forth between JR and a wide shot of the audience. He's saying, of course, we're all here for entertainment. We're all here to have fun, but this is not part of a storyline. He's out of the kayfabe big time. This is not part of the storyline. This is all. This is very real. And Jerry the King Lawler, my broadcast partner, is in the ring right now, looking things over. The EMTs are here. Then they go to the promo piece for the next match, which was a mixed tag with Val Venus and Nicole Bass, we've mentioned her in the past, against Jeff Jarrett and Deborah, mixed tag. So they played that promo piece. And JR's trying to pump it up, and you could tell he's kind of not, and he's like, all my children couldn't describe this story better. And you could tell he's like just saying it because the paper's telling him to say it. They play the promo piece. We come back. We're still with a wide shot on the crowd. JR goes back into as I mentioned to you earlier, Owen Hart, the Blue Blazer, was supposed to come into the ring in a big superhero entrance, and something went terribly wrong. The something broke or something came loose, and Owen Hart fell to the ground, fell to the ring. Nothing was mentioned about how he fell to the ring.
Right.
He just fell to the ring. And he says, JR continues to, this is not part of the story. This is very real. He is hurt. And then when he said heart massager, then everybody started looking at each other like, okay. Then Jerry sat down and he looked as white as a sheet. And JR turns to him and says, King, what's the situation? What's the situation in the ring right now? And he goes, and you could tell the crowd actually started to clap because Owen was put on a stretcher and stretchered out of the main body of the arena and to the hospital in Kansas City. And Jerry goes, yeah, it's and he's, dead serious. And at the time, Lawler never gave that look, and he just said it's not good, and that was it. I didn't know what to think. You think to yourself, all right, well, guy got hurt, Owen got hurt, we're praying for him, we hope everything's okay. I don't know about you, JR, but I don't think anybody really had the gravity of the moment yet. I think at the moment, I remember we were thinking, wow, oh my God, he fell 80 feet, holy crap. Maybe he landed on something soft, or maybe
there's a couple things. Yeah, there's a couple of things with this. I remember thinking, you're wondering, all right, is this part of the show? Even though they're saying it's not. Blazer had been known for being clumsy, and if there's any time in wrestling history that was the worst time for something like this to happen, as far as believability, it was now. Because they were in the middle of a period where they're doing crazy stunts every week, all kinds of wacky shit, and you really couldn't completely... You wanted to believe it, but you couldn't really... Well, you don't want to believe it, but you couldn't really put it past them at this point to not be doing this as a storyline. You just couldn't count it out. It's awful, and it's tasteless, and it put you in such a weird position as a fan, because you're like, God, I want to believe that they would not have done this, that they will not make this, that they will not fake this guy's death and kill me. We were thinking, maybe they're trying to kill the Blue Blazer character, and Owen Hart will come back and say the Blue Blazer's dead, but I'm alive. We were thinking something like that was maybe where they were headed, and Owen would come out and win the IC title, and it was going to be a dummy that fell, and that's what you wanted to believe. But then you're like, God, would they really do this? And part of you's hoping it's a work, and part of you's hoping it's that they wouldn't stoop this low, but that means the worst, that if it is a work or isn't a work, that Owen's dead or severely injured anyway. If you take it at face value at this point and you're assuming it's not a work, we were thinking the worst is that his career's over. We're like, how is it? He's never gonna come back. He's gonna probably sue them and then leave, and he's he may have broken legs or broken back, and you're not really picturing that maybe much of the gravity of it, because I guess you just wouldn't expect someone to die on pay-per-view over something like that. And while you're trying to rationalize in your head that, he could probably fall that fast and may just land on or fall that far and just land on the mat and be alive and just severely injured, and he'll heal someday. Deep down you're like, oh, God, can he survive a fall like that? And then as things leaked out and you realize how he fell and where he fell and what he hit, and you kind of piece it together like, wow, this is pretty much worst case scenario for anything. So at this point, what was running through your head as far as the show? Like, were you still kind of into it? Were you sitting there kind of just waiting for an update and having a hard time enjoying yourself? Where were you at mentally?
Well, I remember that we were all just kind of sitting there going, I remember Mike saying, this has to be a work. We all know Vince Russo. We kind of knew him now from the websites. Most of the people in the room were like you were thinking just now, some people were thinking that, oh, this must be something. But I'm thinking to myself, nah, JR would not be the kind of guy. Now, mind you, at the time, Mike had only been a wrestling fan for like a year. So he didn't understand a lot of the stuff pre-1998. And I was saying, and Dr. G was there, and we were saying that JR would not have gone for this. Neither would Jerry, for that matter, if it was a work. That they wouldn't have been that believable and sounded that serious.
Right. But then you get to the point of, something else that was prevalent at this time in wrestling, the worked shoot.
Right.
Did they just not tell anyone? Did they pull this shit and only a few people knew? And again, I don't...
Well, Montreal was only a year old a little over a year old at that point.
Yeah, and, but it's still hard to think that they would have pulled that off and that even Owen would have gone along with it. Right. So I think it's hard to believe that it was a work. As much as I think we're trying to all convince ourselves that it was, there's no way it could have been. And all for such a stupid, pointless stunt, something that was going to be lost on a show You know, in the aftermath, they're trying to make it like, oh, it's gonna be entertaining and you're just like, God, it was so stupid. Did you really need this?
Yeah.
You know, they're duped into the fact that Sting had been doing it for years in WCW now at this point, and he started doing it like in '97. So you're kind of like, oh, well, you know, they've been doing it. It's fine. Nothing's ever happened. But for a company making the amount of money they were making at this point, to not get the best possible equipment is asinine. And the fact that, you know, if this was like 96 and they were trying this shit and they had like no money, then you get on them for trying stuff when they couldn't afford it. Now they can afford it. They're just being stupid and cheap.
Right.
And if you're Owen Hart, yeah, how do you not... I don't know. It's hard to criticize, I guess. But how do you not triple check that shit?
I thought somebody was up there with him.
Well, they were, but didn't Vince do a test of it or something? Isn't that part of the story as well?
Yeah, there was a story where somebody else got on it. I don't know if it was Vince.
I think it was Vince. I think he may have done it during like the pre-show, and then I feel like I read that Owen had done it too in his like earlier in the day as like a test run.
So the guy that was up there was
like a tech or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, they should have realized that little clip. I mean, how do you look at that and say, okay, this is going to support me?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are a million things you can look back at leading up to that moment and say, God, this is stupid. But in the end, it all comes down to a pointless fucking stunt. Really did add nothing to the show. Was meaningless. It wasn't a character that was going to draw millions of dollars. It was just a stupid piece of a circus on this night.
Yep.
And
that I agree with. That it was unnecessary.
You know, I put the fault right on, you know, Vince, not for the aftermath. And I'm not going to say they killed him because they're not the ones that designed the faulty equipment. But to me, there was never a spot or a place in wrestling for stupid shit like this.
Yeah.
And just because WCW and Sting had done it fine, you're still risking it every time. And if you ever looked at the harness Sting had, it would take him like 6 minutes to unwrap that fucking thing from his body when he gets to the ring. He had to like step out of the fucking jumper and get everything else.
It was practically an entire body thing. I mean,
Sting's
we've never
was
actually
full,
seen.
Yeah,
right. We've never actually seen what Owen had to wear.
It was like a friggin' like a clip, like you would hook your keys on. I thought it was like that, like a sail clip.
I think it was one strap across his chest. That was it.
Yeah, and then he was just clipped on, and the thing just snapped.
Some Velcro thing popped loose, or it was something like that. But Sting was pretty much he was almost like in Kevlar.
Yeah, Sting was well secured. So, I mean, if you're going to replicate it, then replicate it. At this point...
you go back, think he took a chance at WrestleMania 12.
Well, but he was really... I mean, Shawn was really lashed onto that, too. He was in that...
Yeah, but I mean, exactly. Oh, I'm not saying that it was... I'm not looking at it from a haphazard viewpoint, but anything can break.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, no, in this instance, obviously that thing was... I mean, that pulley he was holding was freaking gigantic, but you never know. But no, I mean, in the instance of the equipment, obviously what Shawn had in Anaheim was gigantic compared to probably what Owen had on.
No, it all comes down to this. At this point, they were cocky and lazy. And for as on top of the world as they were arrogant that anything could take them down. They just got really, really cocky about it.
Yep.
And they weren't thinking. They got lazy and stupid with something like this, and they're lucky that it didn't completely destroy their business. I still don't know how they survived these weeks following. I mean, it just shows you how hot the product was, that they were able to survive this. And we'll get more into it as we move along here. But at this point in the show, I'm not really thinking about them stopping the show because only from our perspective, we didn't know what was going on. And, we'll talk about as we go what they should have done as more information came out.
Right. Yeah, at this point, you're thinking, Owen's hurt. Let's hope everything's all right. We'll cancel the match and move on to the next one, and hopefully we'll get an update in an hour or so, and everything's okay, and he's just severely injured, or hope at worst severely injured, and move on from there. So,
yeah, I mean, like I said, I was definitely picturing multi-million-dollar lawsuit, more ammo for the Harts. Owen in a wheelchair in the courtroom, slagging Vince. That's what I was picturing. Yeah. And I think part of it, again, was just hoping for the best. And it's sad that the best case scenario in this was probably him becoming a paraplegic at best. Exactly. From the fall he took. But again, I think we were just trying to talk ourselves into it. And I think deep down, many people watching this on this night knew what was going on, except for those in the stands, because a lot of people in the stands have been on record and come out and said that they thought it was a dummy, or it was hard to see exactly what was going on, and they weren't really given any information. They were kept in the dark on most of this, so it must have been really tough being in that arena that night.
Yeah, because it's not like JR's announcement was going over a speaker or, like the house mics or anything.
No, they kept them in the dark completely.
Yeah, so I'm happy because obviously technology in 1999 is not like it is now. Obviously, people didn't have cameras on their phones or anything like that. People brought cameras, and you've gone on YouTube.
They couldn't put the camera on their phone to tout, and the camera
Exactly.
the camera wasn't an app they could download to put onto the phone.
You can't put apps in exactly, and people were bringing in projectors, and it's people had periscopes or telescopes or whatever. I don't know. But the point is they didn't have anything easily. And you go on YouTube and you go on Daily Motion and people make up shit and look at this.
I can't believe a video of that has never leaked. I mean, people did have videos on cameras at that point, and there might have been some phones that had the basic technology of it.
Maybe,
but I cannot believe there's not one. Not that I ever want to see it or wish it would be released, but I just cannot. I'm just shocked that nothing has ever leaked from that night. As far as video footage goes,
you've got to think there's got to be one or two unscrupulous people on this planet who for their own. Well, here's what I got, everybody. I'm
sure it's on video in WWE's library. There's no doubt about it. They have it on tape because they film everything. So I'm sure it's there. I'm surprised that has not leaked out. Some disgruntled employee, anyone. I just it must be completely in a safe under lock and key. So I don't think many people have access to that tape. But just a fucked up night.
Yeah,
and it starts here.
The worst part was the next match involved people the closest to him on the roster. You were hoping for another match, but after that we went to a live interview with, I don't know if it was Michael or Kevin. I think it was Cole. Was with Deborah and Jarrett, and they clearly were a mess.
Yeah.
Mostly Deborah. Jarrett's a pro. Jarrett's been in the business a long time. His dad's into this, shit happens backstage, and you got to suck it up and deal with it. And at the time, and he does say, "Owen, we're praying for you." So he got through his promo, but Deborah clearly was like, "I just want to go home." No interest in doing this match anymore, to be honest with you.
No, and as the story goes, Jarrett, Deborah going by, and they're wheeling Owen out on the stretcher, and they're walking by him, and as they're going to the ring, and you can just tell that things are not right.
No,
and God, I want to understand both sides of it. I want to sit here and just rip them and say, how could you send this guy out to the ring? You couldn't flip things around quickly and have a different match go out here. Why did you have to have these two go out?
Right.
But on the other hand, I'm sure it was complete chaos. I'm sure everyone's running around trying to check on Owen. There's probably just some third from the top guy telling them just to get to the ring, and I'm sure it was complete confusion and chaos.
You figure Vince is, and here was the bad part. They're involved in storylines now. They got to do. They're in stuff now, so they don't know what the hell's going on. Kevin Dunn's probably doing something. It was at the truck, and it had to have been an absolute disaster at that point.
So that is where maybe you step in and say, well, if things are this out of control and things are not looking good, maybe you should, at this point, say, all right, we can't do this. We can't go out. I know these people are paid. I get it, but let's just go out there and say, look, something really bad's happened. We'll make it up to you in the future. And I can't imagine there'd be too many people upset in that arena if they knew what was going on, that they had to cancel the show. I can't imagine that happening. And I get that things are chaotic and it's hard maybe to make that decision. I'm sure looking back, no matter what he says publicly, I'm sure Vince looks back and says, I really wish we would have canceled. I'm sure that's one of his regrets. And Michael McDonald actually told me there was an interview on some Australian station in 2002 when someone asked about it, and he said that it's one of his biggest regrets. Hang on, I want to pull it up here. He did an interview on Fox Sports Australia 2002, and he said if there's any regrets, he said it was Owen. You could tell he was really bothered by it, and I'm sure. It's awful on many levels, and you can say, oh, he just cares about his business or hurt his business, or you can say, Vince is he's not a heartless bastard. This guy, a guy he's known for years, died on his watch. It's going to take a toll on you, no matter what your role or what kind of person you are. So I'm sure if there's anything maybe he could have went back and done, I still think he probably would have canceled the show at that spot.
Probably. But we will speculate later on other stuff. But at the moment, it did continue. Mm-hmm. And the next match was the mixed tag, Val Venus, Nicole Bass against Jeff Jarrett and Deborah. Goes back to the whole weird love rectangle of Val wants Deborah, Jarrett's pissed, but now he asks Nicole Bass for help, and she loves him, and that brings the infamous the infamous "I want your slide trombone in my brass section," or can I do the Nicole Bass? I want your slide trombone in my brass section.
Oh God.
And you're like, oh Jesus.
Yeah, Bass had been brought in to be Sable's muscle and her backup, but Sable started to get kind of a big head around this time. Was the first, well, actually, the next in a line of divas that got a major push and started to believe the hype. Yep. And ended up being such a bitch, they shit canned her. They're like, you know what? We're getting big, and we don't really need this shit anymore, Sable, so go fuck yourself. So the women's title has now been vacated. And with Val and Deborah, as you said, have been kind of making eyes at each other, pissed off Jarrett. So, and then on the memorable Raw leading up, Val got knocked out, and Bass gave him mouth-to-mouth, and Val ended up enjoying it. So Val and Bass, kind of a little unit here with Sable out of the picture. And the interesting thing to talk about now, Scott, if you remember, leading up to Backlash, we mentioned a new show that was going to be debuting, and that was SmackDown. We had the pilot episode aired a couple days, or it was taped a couple days after Backlash and aired that week. And it would be picked up and begin airing full-time in September on UPN. The original plan for that was actually to make it an all-women's show and be featured on Sable. But with Sable getting canned, they decided to go against it and just make it another version of Raw, basically.
And I couldn't fathom that airing.
I don't know how it would have lasted. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't see it being very successful. But the idea was to build it really around Sable. I mean, that was the plan.
Yeah.
I mean, she was Sable. Say what you want about her promos and her everything. She was mega over in early '99. I mean, she was positioned with Rock and Austin as really the guys always showcased on things, and Mankind was kind of that next tier with the Undertaker. But Sable, Rock, and Austin were really like the three megastars here.
Well, if you remember, I believe it was right around WrestleMania 15. TV Guide did 4 special covers.
Yep.
The 4 covers were Austin, Rock, Foley, and Sable.
Yep.
Easily she was positioned as the standard bearer for the Divas division, although women's division. The word diva was used individually, but was not used collectively for a few years. But again, another one who didn't understand the business, and it cost her because she didn't realize. Well, you can't. You think you're going to walk around to be Sable somewhere else? I don't think so. So in essence, her career ended pretty much at that point, at least for the time. We'll talk more about her down the line because she obviously does turn, but we won't get into that now. But at the time, you're like, oh, well, that really sucked. So now even the knockouts, listen to me, the women's division, she was knocked out. The women's division is in limbo at this point. This match, it's what you make of it. Jarrett was a mess. Deborah was a mess.
Yeah, they all were. I mean, this is really guys that were sent out there to just kind of keep things going while everyone tried to figure out just what the fuck was going on. So
yeah, I think the easiest thing to do. I don't think you could just rushed out there and said, "All right, something bad happened. We got to stop." Or "Good night, everybody," and you walk out. That would have been awful on many levels, and it's easy morally to say that. And I'm going to get into more of this later on when we get more into the story. It's easy to just go, well, I should have canceled the show. Well, if Vince or somebody ran out in the middle of the ring and said, oh my God, something bad happened, good night, everybody, and then leaves. Well, what the fuck is that going to be?
Well, it's not like something bad happened backstage, though. I mean, it's clear that it happened. I don't know. I mean, I kind of agree with you, but not really, because I feel like if Vince came out and said that, I think everyone would know what the fuck he was talking about.
I think
they just saw a guy fall 70 feet from the ceiling. I think they could piece it together.
I think at the moment, let's just go a couple more matches, see what's going on. When we hear something...
I feel like it's either do it then or just not do it at all.
Well...
I think if you're going to wait matches, at this point, then you're getting towards more than halfway through the show. So it's like...
Well, that's like I said, that's why I... Well, we'll get into that when we get to that point. Let's all right,
well, Val and Bass get the win in 6 minutes. Yeah. So let's move on to the next match. Get to the
and then Bass and Val make out, and Val actually looks like, oh wow, you're not as bad as I thought you were. So there you go. Next match is another reason, as I discussed earlier, JR, about the tag division. We mentioned one tag team. Now, before any of this happened, Jarrett and Owen were no longer a tag team anyway, as you could tell. Jarrett was kind of siphoned into this situation with Deborah. Owen obviously was in the IC chase. So they had already broken up. What happened that night had nothing to do with their tag team. That was a totally different thing. They were broken up anyway.
Yep.
Another team that broke up, and it was kind of sad. I was a little bummed because they were my team that year. The New Age Outlaws. I think it was evident that once Triple H turned heel at WrestleMania, it was a matter of time before you'd start seeing the pieces of DX kind of splinter off. Obviously, X-Pac was already involved with Kane and tag team championships, but of course he did have a little mini feud with Triple H after what happened at Mania. They had a great match at Backlash. You and I documented it last week. So, did you feel already at this point that DX had hit? Before we talk about this, did you even realize at WrestleMania that okay, DX is done with him breaking up, or do you think they were going to try and move on and add guys, or what were your thoughts on the faction going to this show?
I didn't think they were going to try and add other guys, but I guess I assumed they would probably just slowly go their own way, but not really break up our feud. So I just figured X-Pac would go into the Kane thing, and the Outlaws would just kind of stay as a team in the division and do their own thing, and they'd be loosely aligned, but still try and keep the moniker going. But I think it was fairly obvious as soon as we got to after Backlash where they were headed. I mean, it wasn't really much of a shock when they did what they did. So Billy Gunn was starting to crave some singles fame, was tired of being pegged as a degenerate and a tag wrestler, and subtle commentary recently started saying how Billy was being held down. Billy completed his heel turn when he assaulted X-Pac on the 426 Raw and then turned on Road Dogg when he tried to stop him. Gunn beat X-Pac on 5-2, which led to a big brawl with the Road Dogg afterwards. They fought in a 6-man match the week before this, and this would be their first one-on-one encounter since Revenge of the Taker back in April 97. Of course, way before they even started the team. So, since becoming a team, their first one-on-one match here. Mm-hmm. What did you expect going into this one? Were you expecting the curse of the broken tag team? Were guys unable to kind of deliver on that promise of what could be, or were you kind of aware that, all right, this may not be the best match based on who was involved?
Well, exactly. I mean, we all kind of know that Road Dogg is good. He's not great. He's good. Billy Gunn.
How much of Road Dogg was hidden in this team, though? How much were they able to hide him with this tag team that somehow found this magic?
Well, pretty good
amount. What he lacked.
90% of the time, he was always the face in peril. So he took the good shit kicking, and Billy always got the hot tag. So that was an effective hiding. And I think Billy was just a good tag team wrestler, and he was the better looking. He was, obviously in better shape. I mean, not that Road Dogg wasn't fat, but he wasn't chiseled like Billy was. And best part about this mute mic, in case I have to, instead of me trying to hide behind the headset. But at this point, I think it was needed because obviously the roster was going through a state of flux, and other things around wrestling were precipitating maybe the future of new teams coming in and some other teams needing to kind of phase themselves out. So,
did you think this was going to be a failed experiment? I mean, did you think Billy Gunn had it in him to be a heel? Did you think these guys could go solo, or did you think it was a mistake breaking them up?
No, I don't think it was a mistake breaking them up.
You thought it was worth the risk.
I was upset as a fan because I love the guys. They were my favorite team.
But you thought it was worth the roll of the dice to see if they could strike something with Billy Gunn.
Yep.
Okay. I don't disagree with you.
He was a heel. He's a snotty toolbox. He was like that when he was in when the Smoking Guns had that mini heel run in, what was it? Late 95, mid-late 95, I guess it would be, or was it mid-late 96? I guess it was mid-late 96. Yeah. He was a pretty solid heel. And he was due. He was the one that needed to turn heel if you were going to start breaking up.
Oh, right, obviously. I think part of it, too, is that everything they touched seemed to be gold at this point. So I think he just assumed it was going to work out. I mean, we're like, well, everyone else is getting over, so this will work too. And I think as the months go on, we'll kind of track it along, kind of waiting. But I feel like they were doing no wrong at this point as far as character development, that you just assumed it was going to work out for them.
And like I mentioned in my comments, you have two guys kind of back and forth in there. You have Road Dogg, who had unbelievable charisma, great connection with the crowd, but on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of work rate, he was like a 6. Then you have Billy, who, at least in a tag team mode, he has a work rate of 8.5, and is also, pretty good shape.
8.5. It's a bit high, no?
As a tag team wrestler.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
As a tag team wrestler. But
look, that team is proof positive of the sum being better than the part, the whole, whatever the fuck it is. The sum of the parts are better than the whole.
Of its parts. Yeah.
And these two guys alone,
never talking about.
Yeah, these two guys alone just weren't getting it done up until this point where, as a team, they could do. So I think it was a real question as to whether it was a good move, but I think it was worth a chance because the upside of making a major heel star outweighs what you're losing with them as a team, especially when you can always go back to the well if you need to.
Right.
So I think it was worth the risk.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think it was worth the shot, and will it pay off? We'll see. But here, do you think they rushed this blow-off match?
No. I mean, I think it was fine.
The 2 weeks was fine to build. You don't think they should have teased it?
Well, considering what Billy Gunn would be doing next month, which might have already been in the plans,
right?
I think they kind of needed to get it done now. I don't think it was that. I don't want to discount their value on the roster, but I don't know if they were high enough to where they needed that many weeks of build. I think 2 weeks was good enough. This show was very top heavy. I would consider this a double main event, and we'll get to those two matches later. But I think 2 weeks was fine. Again, because Billy had was going to have bigger fish to fry. The following month and throughout the summer.
Yeah, but you don't think that could have been part of that?
What's that?
You don't think it could have been part of that?
Maybe. Well, he would. Didn't they face each other the next month?
No.
That I'm not sure.
No, they should have.
No, they should have. Maybe. What would you have? Would you have waited a month then?
I think I would have.
Okay. Well,
I would have had.
Then fine. So what you're saying is you would have waited on the heel turn, not on the heel turn when it did, and then
No. I wanted the heel turn there. I want more build before the match. I would have done the heel turn and had him hurt Road Dogg. So Road Dogg would be out for a few weeks.
Okay.
Have Billy go over someone here to really solidify him as a heel, maybe just a lower level face, and then you move on and you have Road Dogg come back, enter the tournament at King of the Ring, and maybe you have them both get to the finals or something like that. And you do it there. I'm just saying it seemed a little rushed. Like they split up and then 2 weeks later they're having a match already. After such a run of being a team, as long as they have, it just seemed, it seemed like you could have given a little bit more time to let them.
Okay. Well, I
minor quibble. It didn't really matter in the long run. And I think, for all things considered, the match itself was all right. Gunn gets the win. Not a shock there because, he's the one that's going to get the push. And really, I just wondered at this point as well, is Road Dogg going to get left behind? To me, that was a question, too. Are they just going to dump him and focus on Billy and just kind of let Dogg dwindle? But they didn't. They keep him propped up as well, which is good to see.
Maybe they had maybe they had things planned for him. And, he's always a good tag partner. Maybe they would have, maybe him and X-Pac would have been a team eventually if something happened with Kane or whatever.
So now at this point in the card, Scott, we haven't heard again about what happened at all, right?
No. Nope. Not yet. It would be this match is coming up, but we've heard nothing about Owen at this point. Okay. Not yet.
All right, so tell them about our next match.
Yes. Our next match is an 8-man elimination match, and this is where we'll talk about the real beef of the main event storyline. Well, we really can't tell you about the match till we tell you about what happened in the storyline. So, JR, why don't you tell us about the merge
of the Union? The Union consisted of 4 men who were blamed for the corporation's pre-ministry failures and were fired. They waged a war against the now combined, as we'll get to, corporate ministry. This is where Shane really was stepping up as a big-time heel. And these 4 guys were banding together to slow him down. And the Union consisted of Test, who was out of the corporation, of course. Remember, we talked about a backlash, the lead up to that, where Triple H kind of fed him to the wolves. And they just felt like he was fucking up too much, so they dumped him. Ken Shamrock, who had shown his loyalty to Vince and not to Shane and the corporation, so he was booted. The Big Show, we all know his travails. And Mankind obviously has been at odds with Shane and the corporation for many, many months.
Right.
So the Union had now joined forces. They have usurped William Regal's version of William Regal's Real Man song with the little Union whistle at the beginning. And this faction would be fairly short-lived due to circumstances beyond their control, but the Union does make it to pay-per-view here in this match against a mix of the corporate ministry. I guess we'll get into more of the corporate ministry in a bit, but here they're comprised of Farouk, Bradshaw, the Acolytes, Viscera, and Big Boss Man.
Yes.
No Midian.
No Midian. Well, he did his job on Heat.
True, but usually seems like he's always involved in these matches.
Yeah, I got to get thrown in there, exactly. Interesting match here. One of the key things I remember about this is that Foley hardly did anything.
Yeah, he was hurting.
He was hurting bad. The match is 14:45, slightly under 15 minutes, and I would say probably the first 12 minutes he does a squat. Actually, the guy who does most of the work in this match, and it's pretty much a showcase, was Big Show. It was pretty much his match to be showcased, finally. Because he gets beat up a lot, but he hits some big moves, and he gets a big pin. He choke slams Farouk. And do you remember JR? The other JR, when Big Show choke slammed Farouk for that elimination, which was about 7.5 minutes in, Ross called the choke slam the showstopper.
Yeah, that was kind of the name for it for a little bit, I think.
Yep. But of course, how long was that going to last? So,
True.
Good nickname, though.
Yeah.
But I said, like I say in my comments, though, it was 1999 who really gave a crap. Know? But, yeah, in my opinion, this match was to showcase Big Show, finally, after him getting all, futzed around and whatever was going on. And really not expose Foley as just being so badly out of shape. His knees are shot. In fact, the week, not the next night, but the week after.
2 weeks after.
Yeah, because obviously the next night. The week after the show, he is taken out by Triple H and is gone for a while to have his knee surgery.
Yeah, he was in rough shape here. Yeah. And interesting because, we talked about the live crowd doesn't really know what's going on, and that proves here because they were actually pretty into this match and pretty heated for it. But as you know, these 8 guys are just not feeling it. Obviously, kind of going through the motions. And at this point, you're really wondering what the hell's going on. And you start to convince yourself maybe things aren't bad because maybe we just haven't heard anything because they've got him going, they got him breathing, and we'll get some good news soon. That's what you're really hoping for.
Right.
And these 15 minutes felt like an eternity waiting for more updates from anyone.
Right.
Anything. And just kind of watching these 8 guys go through the motions out there. And the Union gets the win. Mankind gets the final elimination on the Big Boss Man. So Union moves on. What did you think of putting these 4 guys together?
I think it was a great idea. Shamrock was kind of out of the loop of being the heel, so it was good to have him back as a face. Test needed kind of a change of pace himself as well. Big Show obviously needed something because he was rudderless, and Foley was just there. I loved the Acolytes at this point. I was actually big Farouk Bradshaw guys right
I loved
now.
him. I was big.
I remember Dr. G was I remember Dr. G was a big fan of him too. And Boss Man. We were actually pretty there was a couple people in our group that didn't like Boss Man, thought he had no moves, but
what the cool thing with the Acolytes were we didn't have like stiff wrestlers in the WWF in a long time, and you had these guys that just went out there and beat the shit out of people.
Yeah.
And this is before we really knew what some of that offense would do to you. Later years we'd find out, but at the time it seemed really fucking cool.
It's funny
snapping off those spine busters.
Yeah, it's funny how and clotheslines. It's funny how the roster, even at this point, and the company, is red hot, of course, but the roster was really banged up.
Yeah,
obviously taking tonight out of the equation, of course. There were guys. 2 major players. Taker, who we've talked about extensively, and we'll get more into him later, was banged up. Foley clearly banged up. Yeah, it was a lot of things. I think that's where a lot of these heel turns and roster positioning needed to happen because of the injuries that were happening to major players. And I think that's where the Billy Gunn heel turn came in. I think that, and I also think and I mentioned this at Mania, and I think I mentioned at Backlash too. I think that's where the Triple H turn came from.
Yep. To
kind of really fill up the heel side of the roster because we got to,
Well, I think part of that too is they knew it was time to start pushing him.
Well, that too, yeah. But I think, but it was also because there were some top heavy guys that were a little nicked.
Mm-hmm.
I think this match would have been more entertaining. This was, in my opinion, this was the one match of, well, it's hard to tell. The next match, I think, was also effective. But let's put it this way. This was one of the two post-accident matches of the night that clearly were affected. The other two matches, I don't know how much better they would have been in a normal setting. I think this one would have been really fun if everything was okay. I don't know if you agree, but...
Yeah, I mean, you had 8 guys that knew what they were doing, 8 veterans. I'm sure it would have been fine. I'm surprised they didn't try and redo it on TV later on, but it is what it is. So, Union wins, and Scott, why don't you get to what comes next?
All right. Well, they're in the ring celebrating, and then I'm watching it tonight, and I wonder if there's an edit, because it gets very weird. Suddenly we get this camera. This is what I'm watching tonight. I know I have the tape here.
What version were you watching, though?
Today?
It had to be the actual, right? Because this has never been released anywhere.
Yeah, it was the actual.
So you were watching my copy?
No, I was watching it off Daily Motion.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I didn't watch your tape. Your tape is. I'm looking at it right now. Your tape's right over there. No, I was watching this. I was a little quiet at work today, and I had it in the background while I was working. So I actually didn't watch. I mean, I watched some of it, but most of it I was just listening to audio.
Because my tape, I have the actual. I mean, I was recording it that night, so my tape has the everything. And
well, no, mine has the promos for King of the Ring the next month. And it had, you win a free...
Oh, I was just confused. You said you thought there was like a cut or an edit.
It just seemed weird. Like there was a... It must not have been. Maybe it was just a way... Maybe it was just deft.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think they've ever...
No, I bet you it was just deft production. Because it seemed like a weird transition. That's what I was thinking of. It just seemed too clean. But maybe it just was. I mean, remember, they were... At this point, production-wise, they were really hitting their stride.
Yeah, they were.
So, in any event, the match ends. The Union's in the ring. They're celebrating or whatever. And then we cut to the crowd again. And then we do the... I think it's a promo for King of the Ring. I think. And we go to JR and King at the table, and they're both very sullen. And I was going to play the clip. I had it, but I changed my mind. JR says, earlier tonight we talked about the Blue Blazer, Owen Hart. He was going to come down from the roof in a very from the ceiling in a very superhero-esque, grandiose entrance. He was supposed to face the Godfather tonight for the Intercontinental Championship, but something went terribly wrong. Not a storyline. He fell from the ceiling, and he hit the ring. And JR paused, and he said, "I have the unfortunate assignment to tell you that Owen Hart has died. Owen Hart has tragically died from an accident here tonight at Over the Edge." And then there was like 10 seconds of silence. There was a wide shot of the crowd. And then the graphic came up for the next match. I at least as far as I remember, and I remember talking about this yesterday with Dr. G, that we were just, what do you say? I've never, ever experienced anything like that before. When you're just stopped on a dime by something like that. When they had the looks on their faces, you're thinking, oh, something bad. Maybe, he's conscious, but we're not sure of anything else. He's not, we're not sure of any structural damage. We'll give you more information as we get it. That's what I was waiting for. I was not expecting he is dead. No way. Anybody who was bona fide thinking he was about to say he's dead is full of crap.
No, I was. You
really?
Weren't?
No, I was expecting he's conscious. We're not sure. I was a little optimistic. I was not expecting him to say he was dead. I honestly wasn't.
I mean, I wasn't surprised he had died after what.
No, I'm not surprised he died because of the injuries. I'm surprised. How do I word it? Once I heard it, and it took me a minute, I said, well, it was a pretty bad fall. But before that, I wasn't expecting him to be dead. I thought he was going to be in critical condition. We're not sure about...
I'll say this. I am surprised they... I'm surprised they announced it and didn't... I mean, they probably would have caught a lot of shit, but I'm really surprised they didn't just kind of wait and release it in the press or something after the show.
Well, obviously,
I am shocked they told everyone.
okay.
Not shocked, but
Well, let's put it this way. They obviously couldn't say anything on TV until they told Martha. Obviously. She had to be the first to know, of course. I don't know what the pecking order is for something like that. My assumption is they told Martha, and then I guess they told Stu or Helen.
I don't know. I mean, I read...
And they told Brett, I guess. I mean,
No, they didn't tell Brett. Brett was on a flight like to L.A. or something, and Bischoff told him. I think Bischoff broke the news to him. I've read Brett's book twice and Martha's, and I'm just having a hard time recalling all the exact details.
I'm embarrassed to say I have not had a chance to read Brett's book yet. I didn't know Martha wrote a book.
Yeah, it was that one that was called like Broken Hearts or something. It was.
Oh, okay. Oh, I remember that. Okay.
It was kind of maligned, and I don't think it made much print because a lot of obviously is her really. I mean, and rightfully so. It's her prerogative and her vision. I mean, she ripped them pretty good, and her belief is that Owen would not have wanted the show to go on, and she's steadfast in that. Vince Russo, on the other hand, has actually done an interview since this, and not when he was in the company. This is afterwards, and he said that he feels Owen would have wanted it to go on because if you go back to Bad Blood '97, when Brian Pillman died, Owen was part of that show. Obviously, went out, wrestled, and went on with the show. And now, granted, he didn't die during the show, but it was that morning they found out.
Okay, let me ask you something. You say that they should have canceled the show 3 matches earlier when it turned out the injury was very serious.
Yeah.
Turn back the clock. I don't know if I remember asking you this when we did the Vault. Do you think they should have canceled Bad Blood? No. Okay.
He didn't die in the arena during the show.
Right. Okay. Some people have said it. I was just curious because you were a Pillman guy. I'm sure you said it.
I mean, I could see, it might have been a good PR move if they did on both ends. But I see why they went on with it then because it was that day. Earlier in the day, they found him, and they made the announcement, and they went on with the show. And now they had more, you could argue the other way, they had more lag time, where they could have thought it through and said, you know what, maybe we should cancel this. But I think it's different than someone who falls to his death during the show in the arena. I mean, it just is.
It's funny. They cancel the show, maybe Montreal never happens, because everything gets pushed a month. Wow. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
I don't think that... Yeah, I could see why they wouldn't have. I mean, Pillman died of basically from drug overdose in his hotel room, whereas Owen Hart was, killed
something out of his
in
control.
a stupid. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's completely different situations.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm just saying. I've seen some people say that. Not RSP, the news board and a couple others over the years, not lately. That what's the difference and
the news board. I like that. I like that generalization.
You like that? The news board. I'm trying to think of the board.
The news board.
The news board.
That's like the people. That's like the people always say they. That's what they say.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to say they. I just couldn't. No, I wasn't going to say they. I hate that too.
The man they call Vader. Who's they? Who's calling him Vader? Damn it!
The guy, not Deaf Dave. I can't remember the. I just wish I can't remember.
I really don't want to get into it. Who cares?
But whatever. In any event, I've seen places where people thought they should have done that too. Anyway, so he says that there's 10 seconds of lag of crowd shot. This was on what I watched today, and it's on whoever taped it and still has it. Obviously, by the way, none of these matches are on
a
DVD, so I didn't even open Graham's page for that reason. And then the graphic came up for our next match. Now, at this stage of the show, there's only 2 matches left. That's why I said to you earlier when you said, "What's the point of canceling it now when ending it now when there's only 2 matches?"
You know what? I've kind of thought about it, and I think looking at it now and after thinking about it, I do think maybe they still could have, even though there's only 2 matches left. I think that was the opportunity for JR to come on and say, "Folks, here's the situation. We just found out. We thought maybe there was a chance Owen was going to survive. He sadly didn't, and due to the injury suffered, and out of respect for Owen and the Hart family, we're going to end the show here." And these 2 matches you will see for free on Raw next week.
Right. Now,
There is nothing here in the day and time of all this TV time they have. You have Heat, you have Raw. You can do a special. You have monthly pay-per-views. Nothing was so important on this show, and I don't care that there's a world title change. Nothing is so important on this show that they couldn't come out and say, and they couldn't wait on it.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't need to do this title change here. You could have done it 2 weeks later. You could have. And I know they had something major planned for the next night.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't, I think they should have done it from the start as soon as the accident happened.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at it here, I still think this would have been a good spot for them to kind of cover their ass and say, we've had time to think it over. In that time, Owen has now passed away. We're no longer running around with our chickens with our heads cut off. We've killed some time. We've kind of thought things over. And we realize now that this is not the right move. We're going to end an hour early. We'll refund you your money. I think that public press goes probably a lot further than the extra money they made by just kind of keeping the show and keeping everyone there.
Mm-hmm. Do you think? Let's lay out the choices or the options with which someone could have decided this. A, Vince could have unilaterally said, we're going to go on, just wrap this thing up. We only got 2 matches left. Let's just get it done and get out of here. B, he could have talked to his brain trust, Kevin Dunn, Shane, Linda, just the brain trust, Pat, and they could have talked about it. Or C, and I wonder about this one, I wonder if he pulled the locker room.
No, I mean...
said, guys, I'm going to take a vote. All right, no, even better. Because those guys they put Triple H, Rock, Steve, and Taker in a room because they were the last 4 matches. What do you guys want to do?
So I'm going to flip it. I think those 4 should have went to Vince and said, Vince, look, this is not rebelling. This is not walking out on the company. We're not trying to piss you off. We can't go out there, and we shouldn't be going out there, and this is not right. I think it's more on them as locker room leaders and as guys that have the power to sway Vince. Mm-hmm. Probably should have been the ones to go to them and say, here's the deal. But no, I mean, on the other hand, I don't think Vince needed anyone's okay to go out there. I think they're the ones making the decision. So to me, if anyone's going to convince anyone or talk to anyone of anything, it should have been those talents. But to me, if Vince is making the decision, just make the decision. You shouldn't need to consult with anyone. Just do what's right. And to me, at this point, when you announce he passed, no one's going to be into the show anyway. I mean, I could barely even watch. I was so distraught. And it's like, I mean, how many? You're going to look at it like we're doing all this all the shit, and no one's ever going to watch. No one's going to care. Why even go on with it? Why? Why even? What is the point? What are we gaining? Look at the balance. You have a lot to lose and very little to gain by continuing on with these 2 matches. There's not as much risk reward there to say, wow, we're going to really turn the show around and win the fans. I mean, you're just not gonna. It's just nothing could possibly happen on this show that would have swayed what had gone down, and nothing should have. There is nothing that really ever should have. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they couldn't just redo these matches a week later on Raw. Mm.
Obviously, family knew. Obviously, Martha had already known, and Stu and Helen probably knew. And at this point, like you said, Bischoff told Brett. I wonder if Vince's original thought was to wait. But that probably would have caused even more shit because you're thinking. Obviously, family, I don't know if they're watching. Obviously, Vince was not in anybody's good graces in that family. Although, if you watch the Heart and Soul, see, this is where the interesting thing comes in, and this could lead to an entirely other podcast somewhere down the line. If you watch the Heart and Soul DVD, the family, I think it was more, you don't want to get sucked into this. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. Because obviously at the time, at the moment, the Hart family and Martha are on the outs. But the family on the DVD said all along, we had no problem with the show going on.
Look, the Hart, you cannot, you just cannot take what the Hart family says legitimately. I just don't think you can, outside of a guy like Brett who has his money and doesn't need the work. I mean, the rest of the Hart family has been proven time and time again to be guys that'll kowtow to whatever Vince wants just for a second of TV time. And
Right. That's
well,
what I'm
I
saying.
do think
You gotta
there
take it
are
with a
times
grain
that
of
Martha, look, I can't say, but I'll hopefully never be in a position that I have to make these decisions. But anyone other than her or Brett, who I think has always had the best interest, whether right or wrong in a lot of the judgments he's made, at the time I felt like most of what he was doing was really for the memory of Owen. And even he kind of went against Martha at some point where he thought it was too much with some of the stuff. But, Smith, Keith, Bruce, any of these guys, Diana, I just can't take it seriously. I just don't. Because they've always been known to just want that next job. They don't want to piss off Vince. They don't want to anger Vince. And they were always worried about what Vince was going to say and do. And when they trucked Stu out on that Raw in 2003, it's like the saddest fucking thing ever. So it's just, it's hard to really say, oh, well, Keith said it was okay. To me, that holds no water with me.
I like how you picked him. At this point, well, I don't think anybody. I mean, at this point, I think everyone was just so glazed that, people just kind of stared at the TV and everything happened after that, and you don't even know what.
That's what I'm saying. I don't see the point in going on. Adam and I were just sitting there like, what the fuck? How is this possible?
Now, let me ask you this. Another devil's advocate question. I feel like it didn't seem like there was that much roster backlash post pay-per-view, let's say as there was post Montreal. Nobody walked out on the company. Nobody's like, this is bullshit. I can't believe you're doing this. Fuck you. I'm out of here. Nobody did that. Why do you think nobody did that there for somebody dying, somebody very special? I mean, this wasn't just some jobber or anything. This was Owen fucking Hart.
All right, I'm going to give you
6 years.
I'm going to give you two reasons. I'm going to give you a cynical reason and a faith in humanity reason.
Okay.
The cynical part of me is saying that
leave the gravy train.
Yes, WWF was a cash cow and WCW was dead as a fucking doornail. In late '97, WCW was bananas hot, making all sorts of money, and WWF was looking to be, almost done.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it too. I think that gave a lot of guys the opening to say, "Oh fuck this, I'm going to cash in, and I can look morally right."
Right.
The faith in humanity piece of me wants to say, well, the Brett thing was predetermined. Vince worked with Sean and whoever else to predetermine to go against the grain of what the business is supposed to be about and screw Vince. I mean, and screw Brett out of the title. And it was, how can we ever trust this guy if he does something like that? How can you look at this guy in the face and work for him knowing he could stab you in the back? Anything, that to me, they're looking at that and saying, okay. Whereas you look at this situation and you kind of can see yourself saying, oh, well, this happened. It wasn't premeditated. No one knew. And I can see myself in Vince's shoes not knowing what to do, and everything happened so fast. And I feel like maybe you could rationalize what happened a little bit easier than you can. Not that you can certainly rationalize Montreal. I mean, there are obviously people who don't believe any of it, but
right.
I think that's kind of the flip side of it. But I think the piece I laid out before maybe played a bigger role. Options were shrinking by 99. And the business was still booming. Right. Don't get me wrong. But WCW was not looking as healthy, and WWF was not looking as ill.
It's kind of sad that you had to give that reason. Not your fault. You're absolutely right.
Well, yeah, I mean...
But isn't it kind of sad you had to say that?
Well, yeah, but if you put yourself in those shoes, too, I mean, anyone's as morally correct as their paycheck, when it comes down to it. So unless you really have the position or it's really something where you need to take this moral stand, it's especially in a business like that that's so limited on where you can draw, it's hard to blame some guys. And maybe some really believed that the show should go on. I mean, I don't know. There could be a lot of guys that really, truly believe that, no, you know what? If that was me, I'd want the show to go on. Maybe there are people that really feel that way. I mean, that could be a part of it, too.
I don't know. I'm still 50-50, and I don't want to sound cold. I'm trying not to. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I'm not sure if they should have canceled it 3 matches earlier when we weren't sure of the extent of the injury. If it turned out he died 3 matches before, then fuck yeah.
Well,
Kill this thing.
I mean, we don't know when he died. Do we know a time? I mean, just because that's when they announced it doesn't mean they didn't know.
Obviously, they weren't going to announce it on camera until Martha, Stu, and Helen knew.
Right. So to my point is, they may not have announced it, but that doesn't mean they can't go off the air and knowing backstage, like Vince, like, this guy's not surviving. Let's just go now, and the reason we'll give is that an accident happened, and we need to focus all of our attention on Owen Hart, and the rest of the show will be made up at another time. To me, that's a better way to act than to say, oh, well, we didn't know he was dead until right now. I mean, come on. That's
Well, no, of course not. But again, you couldn't say anything. You could surmise, but obviously they weren't going to say anything on camera until, Martha, Stu, and Helen knew. Maybe they told Martha, Stu, and Helen an hour before. Maybe let's use the pay-per-view clock. All right, 2 matches away. The last 2 matches were, I think one was, they were long, I think, right? Let's see. One was 11, the other was 22. So you figure when he made the announcement, it was probably like 9:45. He fell probably, 8:30?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a while.
So, I mean, I'm just going by the common clock. I mean, I'm just,
The common clock, as opposed to the less common clock.
As opposed to the proper clock.
Okay.
And so you figure there was at least an hour.
Commoners use.
You figure there was at least an hour of something. The heart massaging, cardiac, any of that kind of stuff was going on at the hospital. Now, who knows how long it was? Did they ever say, did he die in the ambulance? Did he make it to the hospital? I don't remember any of that part, but if that ever even came to light, I don't even know.
We haven't even mentioned is that the ambulance was there due to the Vince ankle injury storyline.
Yes.
Which makes things even creepier.
Yeah. And Vince left earlier in the night in that ambulance. Or on camera, he did. That makes it even worse. Not even worse, but I won't even say ironic. But, so...
Yeah, it was an hour after the event restarted is when JR made the announcement.
Okay. So 9:00?
No, hour after the event restarted.
Okay. Well, at this point, it's probably, like I said, there's 2 matches left.
Yeah, it's probably about 9:45 or so.
Yeah, that's probably what it was. Everyone's glazed over. And these last 2 matches, it's funny, I really haven't thought about this not in a long time, but I remember thinking about it when we wrote the review on bigelow34.prowords.com. And today I was really, how would I go about this? I'm taking more the devil's advocate route, going back to kind of the way my host ways, because I was very curious about your thoughts, because we've never really sat and discussed this in a long time since we did the written review. So today was pretty good to kind of reminisce and get back into to thinking about it. Obviously, using excuses like, trying to do all these refunds, and obviously nobody gave 2 shits. That you can't use that as a reason. No one ever tried to, at least, as far as I know. I guess the thing that upsets me is that if anybody was that pissed off that Vince kept the show going and disrespected what happened to Owen, didn't quit. And your answer is correct. I'm not. You're absolutely right for making that cynical reasoning about, somebody's bread's got to be buttered somewhere. It's sad that you have to give that reasoning, But for a kayfabe, non-kayfabe, this guy got stiffed, I'm quitting. But meanwhile, nobody got as pissed off enough to. I would have thought Jarrett would have at least bolted, but his name was Dirt, and he left it later. Well, we'll get to that anyway. But it's just, I don't know. That part irks me. That if people were that upset that that for respect purposes, they didn't just leave. And it's sad that your cynical reasoning is correct. And you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you at all, JR. The fact you have to say it is bad enough because it's the truth. So But again, when it comes to, buttered bread and paying your way, some people think of that first. And it's unfortunate. Because
you have to. I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and criticize anyone that didn't walk out after this. I'm just not. I mean, you're going to take care of your family. You're going to do what you're going to do. So you can take a stand. You can do what you want, but it happened. They're not the ones that had to make the decision to go on. That's something Vince has to live with.
Hey, you know what? Maybe people call. You know what's funny? Maybe people call Brett.
I doubt it. I think you're looking way too far into this. I don't think. I doubt it. I mean, I think people just said, you know what? It was a decision that had to be made in an instant, and this is not something I can really jeopardize my career over because no one's ever going to look. I don't think anyone ever looked. Honestly, you're the first person I've really heard say, "Why didn't these guys walk out?" Or anything like that. So to me, it's. I just think that's delving further than we need to delve, debating on why these guys did or didn't do what they do. They weren't the ones that had to make the decision. Could they have sat backstage and said, "Vince, we refuse to go out"? Maybe, but at that point, you're not helping anyone at that point because you're just making things more contentious. I think the best bet is just listen to your boss, do what you want to do, and then you worry about it later. In that case,
we're sitting here, and we're also sitting here saying that maybe Vince just was so distraught. Maybe he didn't even know what to do. Maybe these decisions.
Oh, look, I think that's a big part of it. I do. Yeah. I'm sure he didn't. They never witnessed anything like this. I mean, we can all portray Vince as this heartless bitch, but I don't think, I don't think it's all completely black or white to say, yeah, Vince was all about the money. I think it's partly that, yeah, it was a lot going on, and there was no possible way he could really know what to do in this case. And did he make the wrong decision? Probably. Was his thought process wrong? I have no idea. Does he regret it? I'm sure he does.
More than you can know.
Well, we don't
More
know.
than anybody can know.
Yeah, we don't know that he does. I'm assuming he would.
Oh, well, you would. Yeah, I think so. I think he does. I'm sure this was one of the things he talked about with Brett years later when, Brett came back or whatever. But okay. Great debate, JR. Mm-hmm. And, well, actually not debate, not that I disagree with anything, but great, good discussion. And I hope PTB Nation, you enjoyed that. And looking forward to your comments as well. But we will take a break ourselves and kind of reset because we do have to talk about the last two matches. A big one involving a changing of the guard in the heel face ladder, and we do have a title match to discuss. So we're going to take a break, kind of reassess ourselves, and be back with the final two matches. But we shall walk away for the moment. Because
promotional consideration paid for by the following.
What I'd like to have right now.
Chad, do you ever feel that the world revolves around WWF?
I think you mean WWE there, Barf.
Yeah, whatever, but what about David Crockett?
She likes it! Well, what about Jimmy Valiant?
I'm gonna get y'all until I get you, Paul Jones. Ooh.
The Four Horsemen.
We are a family, and we are the best.
The Omni, the Dangerous Alliance.
Please welcome the newest members of the Dangerous Alliance, Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko.
Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express.
The Fantastics are putting the U.S. Tag Team title on the line against the Midnight Express.
Main events with actual work rate in them.
Woo! 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 All right!
It's just not fair to Flair.
It's not fair for Flair.
If this is what you're looking for, please check out Where the Big Boys Play podcast, the only pure NWA and WCW supercard podcast out there.
While you were in Hollywood making movies, Thunder Lips, I was winning world titles.
So a guy from across the pond and a dude from the south, Where the Big Boys Play. It's a great podcast. Harv and Chad are awesome. Check them out. Also check out WrestleChat.net, indeed where it's at. Great message board, plenty of topics to browse, the Still Real to Us podcast, and much, much more. Also, our message board, which is awesome, bigelow34.proboards.com. It's where PTB really began. Written reviews and a boatload of them. In PTB Nation, we have you to thank for that. Plus the Territory Wars, a whole lot more. If you want a one-touch spot for our show, you can head there. Also head to Stitcher.com and the Stitcher app for all phones and tablets, and more details on that. Also, our good friend Graham Cawthon, the history of WWE.com, the best research site you will ever find. Also, another sponsor to the show, the Wrestling Forum, TWFnews.com. They're a wrestling forum, a blog site, much, much more. The guys at TWF creating a wrestling media nation, many blogs, podcasts, and vodcasts. Yours could be included. They're the official forum of WrestleChat.net and the place to be. We've joined up as well. So check them out. Find out what they're about at twfnews.com. Also, you can check out our show at getthepointradio.com. My good friend Mike. It's a great online radio station. If you're not in the mood for wrestling, but you want to listen to music, pop it on. He plays music all day long. You can also check his archive on iTunes, and all of our shows are there as well. Big site.
Hello, everybody. This is Bruno Lauer. I'm on The Place to Be. You're listening to The Place to Be podcast. And I'm going to tell you something right now. If you want to know about our business, this is The Place to Be. The Place to Be podcast. You know why? Because it's like Mama said, it be that way sometimes.
All right, Nation, we are back here on the Place to Be podcast talking about the night of Over the Edge 1999 and, of course, the tragic passing of Owen Hart. Hope you've, I don't want to say enjoyed the show, but at least found it somewhat interesting as we talk about what could and couldn't have happened or should and shouldn't have happened. What could have been prevented and how they could have handled the fallout better. So we're down to the last two matches. At this point, Owen's been had passed away, and we all have found out about it. We're all sitting here comatose watching these last two matches. So, Scott, why don't you set up this first one for us?
Okay. This is a big match from the roster perspective of Crowd because now you have the brand new heel on the block taking on the guy who nobody wants to see as a heel anymore. This is where we will discuss the merge. Or do you want to wait till the next match to discuss the merge?
No, let's talk about the merge later, but let's talk about what happened leading into this. And that is, of course, The Rock. It's finally turned face. Kinda. Yeah. You knew it was coming. You could not. After Backlash loses to Austin again, Shane decided that Rock had kind of outlived his usefulness. So when the corporate ministry was combined, The Rock combined his efforts with Stone Cold and pretty much shoved him over to the face side. On May 2nd, Rock and Austin were forced to face off each other in a lumberjack match, but instead they combined forces and attacked the corporate ministry. As they fought up the ramp, Triple H tossed The Rock off the stage and broke his arm. Storyline. Undertaker tossed Austin off the stage. On May 17th, Rock and Undertaker fought in a casket match. Triple H interfered and re-injured the broken arm, then locked Rock in the casket and pummeled it with a sledgehammer. Before the match, Rock was doing a promo. When China appeared on camera and started jawing with him, The Rock distracted Triple H. Triple H came from behind and attacked The Rock. All of a sudden, Mankind jumped in and saved The Rock from a beating and attacked Triple H. Triple H shook out Mankind with a lead pipe. That would lead to the Raw that we mentioned later when Mick would be knocked off TV. And also, Scott, to the delight of you, Triple H debuts his theme, Our Time, as it was known at that time.
Yes.
Be tweaked, of course, over the next few months. But
and I also added today, as I was perusing our written review, bigelow34.prowords.com, that for the first time, the aesthetics of the true face to heel would come true because for the first time, Triple H would wrestle in short tights and ditched his long.
That's better for you, right? The less clothes.
I knew you were. Woo!
So the theme, obviously, an upgrade of the only one, Jay Hinchy, the only person in America that liked the instrumental theme at Backlash. But we now have Our Time here.
Yep.
And Rock, pretty much a face. And, many people had issue with his video package because, obviously, a big piece of it was showing Triple H bashing a casket while Rock was trapped inside of it. And going by the things that have gone down so far this evening, seemed like poor timing. But, again, something I don't... is it something you're really thinking of ahead of time? Like someone was quick enough to say, hey, you know what? I think in this video package we have something. I'm sure it was pre-packaged and they just rolled on it and probably didn't realize it. So just a case of really shit timing on their part.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, at this point, pretty much everyone's going through the motions. Nobody knows what the hell's going on. Nobody knows what they're playing. People are throwing tapes in. I mean, I'm surprised something didn't play wrong. I mean, no one knows. No one is.
So what did you think of Rock's face turn? Obviously needed, right?
Oh, big time. Big time. Triple H had just taken his slot. And Rock was just so over. And I think the feud with Austin kind of precipitated it. And it wasn't that people were anti-Austin. I think they just love both guys.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. Rock was a more refined, because you needed to have the refined baby face, and then you had to have the rough around the edges working guy baby face, and that's what Austin was. Rock
and
was,
we've talked about it since he turned heel back in November, that fans wanted to cheer this guy since October, and they got taken away from them. And for a while they bought into it, but after a while they were back to, you know what, we want to cheer this guy again.
Yeah.
And that's where we get to. And with Mankind going out and kind of tapering off anyway, they really needed another top face. So they mixed things up. You put Triple H on the heel side and to replace The Rock, basically, and The Rock comes over and replaces Mankind as the top face. So now you've kind of reloaded and restructured your top of the card and made it a little bit fresher.
Yeah, exactly. And I said earlier that there were 2 matches on this card post Owen accident that I think really would have been better on a regular show. The Union, the 8-man tag with the Union, and this one. I was pretty bummed because at the end of the night, I'm like, I really was looking forward to this match, and I don't care. I didn't really care.
The interesting thing too, I thought JR was actually a bit more upbeat in this match.
I know, I agree.
Do you think maybe he was just relieved after getting the announcement out and kind of was able to, I don't say put it out of his mind a little bit, but not sit there worried, waiting for the info. It's done now, and you're kind of like, fuck, that was awful. I can't believe this shit. But you kind of, the adrenaline kicks in, and you just kind of get going again.
Right.
But it seemed like they were really, and the crowd was into this big time. I mean, again, they don't know anything, so it's hard to blame them at all. But they are really into The Rock here.
And JR is a consummate professional, always has been, always will be. And he's like, you know what, King? As much as it sickens me to say, show must go on. People paid for this. We're not stopping. We can't sit here and half-ass it. So to JR's credit, he did the right thing. He didn't sit there. They didn't sit there dumbfounded. They just kind of went through it. And my assumption is I think they thought the same way, that most of us were, which is we could have switched the audio to the SAP and listened to Hugo and Carlos, and no one would even noticed. So I think they were just, you know what, let's just get it done, do it the way we meant to do it, and move on with it. And I think Triple H and Rock probably felt the same way in the ring. Let's just do it. Owen wouldn't have wanted us to sit here. If we were going to wrestle, Owen would not wanted us to sit here and half-ass it. So let's just get it the way we were going to do it and roll with it. And they did. So it was a good match. I wonder how much better it could have been under normal circumstances. The guys had great chemistry. They had a lot of great chemistry in 98. This might be, and obviously we know how far this feud goes. You talk about Rock and Austin as as the centerpiece feud of the Attitude Era, but these two deserve a lot of votes as well. I mean, this feud continues on. I mean, we're going back to almost a year at this point.
Well, kind of two, if you want to go back to the Hunter Helmsley, Rocky Maivia days.
Yeah, I mean, we're going back quite a ways with all these roles changing. Last year, the roles were reversed. Triple H was the funny, cool babyface DX. Rock was the smarmy, arrogant nation heel. And now, literally 12 months later, the whole thing is reversed. It's insane. So it made the writing so great back then. And more from these guys would come.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, this thing's far from over.
Far from over.
This match,
was there.
Yeah.
They went out and it happened, and...
it's too bad because, I'm not gonna say it's too bad because obviously you couldn't control it, but
no, but it's
for what it is and for the situation, it's actually they do a good job of hiding it and going out there and competing, and I'm sure it's one of those things where you kind of want to get out there in a way, and maybe that's part of it too, Scott. Why some of these guys didn't see it as the wrong way to do things because it made us get out there and get lost in it by this point, and you're just like, let's get out to the ring and just put it out of our head for 15 minutes and just go,
right?
And maybe it helped them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And obviously, these guys would put on better stuff down the line. But this is a good kind of grizzled, rough around the edges match that I think would have been a little bit better in normal circumstances. But they did the best they could. So The Rock wins by DQ when Triple H belts Earl across the face, or clotheslines him, I think it was. And he gets the win, and then Rock beats the crap out of him after the match, throws him into the barricade. I think he hits him with a chair. He really lays into Triple H after the match. I think he hits China too. I think he attempts to hit China with the chair. So Rock is definitely. I think one of the big things. I think one of their big objectives on this night was to really finally just make him explode. into a huge babyface star. Of course, that was tempered, but for the most part, they got the point across. So, as best they could. But obviously, this is far from concluding. And now we get to the main event. Stone Cold Steve Austin, your World Wrestling Federation champion, has dodged many a landmine as a champion. He got he won his rematch at Backlash with The Rock, and now the focus changed, and another number one contender has stepped to the fore. However, we talked what happened at the end of Backlash. This is how far back we have to go. The end of Backlash. Just to recap, you remember what happened, JR?
Stephanie was kidnapped.
Yes. Taker was in the back of the, where to, Stephanie?
So the next night on Raw, you want to pick it up here?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Taker was going to marry Vince's daughter, Stephanie, in an unholy wedding. Taker apparently wanted to control the WWF and wouldn't give up Stephanie until he got it. Here's what happened. Lights go out. Mystery comes out to the ring carrying Stephanie on the symbol. Lay her against the ropes. Paul Bearer starts doing the ceremony, reading from a book. Quickly, it's apparent this is now a wedding. Stephanie's being hitched to The Undertaker. When asked, will you, she screams no. Ken Shamrock ran in to make the save, but he's grabbed by the Acolytes and held down from a splash from Viscera. Shane McMahon is preventing the corporation from making the save. Big Show tries to. He manages to wipe out the Acolytes, Viscera, and Mideon, but falls victim to The Undertaker with a baseball bat. Ross and Jim Cornette, who's on commentary, are disgusted at the actions of the Ministry, and that's when Steve Austin, the glass breaks, and he comes down the ramp. He chases blows at The Undertaker, wipes out Mideon. Taker slips out the back. Austin grabs a chair, wipes out all the Ministry, and then hits a stunner on Mideon, unties Stephanie, who gives him a big hug. And Austin was kind of a reluctant hero here, aligning with Vince, as Vince comes out and thanks Austin and hugs Stephanie, and they kind of look at each other with a sly look, kind of like, all right, thank you, and Austin kind of doesn't know what to do. On 5-3, Shane has now fully taken control of the now merged corporate ministry, which is the remaining members of the corporation, which pretty much is just Triple H and China at this point. Is anyone else left?
No, I mean they booted the rest of them.
And Boss Man,
yeah.
And they joined forces with the ministry. So now, of course, known as the corporate ministry, led by Shane McMahon and basically Undertaker and Paul Bearer as well, the three de facto leaders. So Shane shows up and reveals that he was behind the kidnapping of Stephanie, the burning cross at the house, the teddy bear, and everything we've seen since March. So ratings were blowing through the roof on Raw at this point. They destroyed Nitro the week after week. The main event of the 5-10 Raw was Shane, Undertaker, and Triple H versus The Rock, Steve Austin, and Vince McMahon. The overrun was a 9.3, and the overall show got an 8.1.
That's ridiculous.
The highest rated Raw in WWF history. There was no Nitro that night due to the NBA playoffs, but they probably would have gotten destroyed anyway.
Yeah, it wouldn't have mattered.
And so, of course, at one point in 5-17, Austin actually tied Taker to the symbol and raised it to the rafters. So this feud is really kicking into high gear. On a 5-10, it was announced that Shawn Michaels came out, the commissioner, and announced that Vince McMahon would be the guest referee alongside with Shane. Shane had named himself referee for this match. Shane announced that Austin would have to face Mideon before the pay-per-view, but Vince objected. Shane said Austin could get out of the match if Vince took his place, and Vince agreed. The Stooges and Union got trapped backstage, and Vince got his ankle busted by corporate ministry. He was taken from the arena in the ambulance, and it was unknown if he'd make it back out. So Vince, repaying the favor from Austin saving his daughter, said he'll take the bullet for him here against Mideon, and he does. He gets his ankle busted. So the main event is set. Vince is not here. Shane is the referee. Austin versus Taker, and it was a good storyline and a lot of intrigue with Shane stepping up. And we talked about this last month. It was kind of interesting seeing Shane take that role from his dad and really smack him in the face. And again, it was just not the right time to go through this match. It could have been a lot more if they just held off and waited instead of rushing through it here.
Yeah, and from the match itself perspective, it wouldn't have been any better. Taker was hobbled. Austin's Austin. The match was, I remember watching it today going, God, I don't remember anything about this match whatsoever. Except for
good reason,
Yeah, as much as for the piss-poor, hideous ending when everybody falls over each other and there's a cheesy 3 count, it was like, all right, copyright, goodbye. It's like, whatever, just get this done. Let's put it this way. Here's one thing where I'll admit I got mad. You want to get this match over with. You want to get the show over with. You've gone this far. Did this match have to be 23 minutes?
Well, I think they had to fill at the time.
They could have. But at this point, eat the satellite space. If you're talking about canceling the show, you probably could have at least...
Yeah, I mean, you've come this far. Just go through the fucking plans at this point, I guess. I mean,
yeah, I know.
If you're not going to cancel yet, then just do it. I mean, why are you going to... If you're not... There's no point in going through with it without just doing what you're going to do. I mean, if you're just going to shortchange and not do the storyline and wrap the match, then why are you even still on the fucking air? Well, you should have went off a while ago.
Yeah,
don't even go out there and parade them out. Just call it. I mean, to me, if you're going to say we're going through with it, then just fucking do it. None of this half shit.
Right. Which I think a lot of people thought it was half shit.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, Vince comes out. There's a whole big shitstorm at the end. They fall over each other. Vince, Taker, and Steve fall in this big clump. Taker somehow gets on top of Austin. We get a super fast 3 count. Taker rolls out of the ring, grabs the belt, raises his hand. Copyright, good night, goodbye, see you later.
Yeah, this rivals Montreal with how fast they cut off.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, it was crazy. But yeah, so Undertaker's your new champion, and you wonder what happened with Vince and Shane falling into him. Was there something more to it? We'll find out. Yep. Again, the crowd is pretty into it, and obviously they didn't know better. So the show quickly goes off the air.
Mm-hmm.
And now things get even crazier. I remember Adam left, and we just kind of looked at each other like, all right, well, I'll talk to you later. And I remember I called Jim, like I always did, usually after pay-per-views, just to kind of wrap things up. And I remember we just sat there quietly on the phone and just didn't know what to say, and I think we just hung up. It was like, I can't even talk. I mean, we just, we used to talk for like sometimes a half hour to 45 minutes after the show and just kind of wrap and say what we thought was coming next. And it just sucked because...
Yeah.
I don't want to sound cold-hearted, so I'm going to take this. I'm going to qualify. The worst part of all of this was what happened to Owen Hart. I am not trying to trivialize by talking about other things that sucked or were ruined by it. And obviously I know the worst possible thing was Owen dying. And there's nothing worse. If anything could ever be changed, that would be it.
Right.
It does suck that this was such a great period to be a fan of WWF, whether you liked the work rate or anything, any of it, the attitude, whether you're into it or not. It was still a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And wrestling was really catching on. And I felt like we had been waiting so long for it to become mainstream, for it to become a big deal again, to be okay to like it. And it was getting there. We were finally getting to that point. And then this happens. And it's like, what the fuck? It's all the momentum they had been building just seemed so wiped away and so pointless. Because like, how can you even watch this anymore? Mm-hmm. And it was everywhere. I mean, that night, all over CNN and everything. You had Vince on and all this shit going on.
Yep.
And it was
that's
just
what did it for me.
It was crazy seeing all that. Just crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
And
I remember we were off the air. Yeah, we were off the air, and we were in the house, and we were all like getting up, ready to go home. And Heather, Dr. G's lovely wife, then girlfriend, said, "Let's put the news on." I'm just curious. I mean, is this mainstream? It's so weird, JR. You don't even think about it like, is this going to be on the news?
I know, right?
And we put on CNN at 11 o'clock, and it headlined it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they got somebody on. I don't remember who it was.
Steve Blackman.
Somebody came on and did
Mark Merrow, probably.
Yeah. And that's when I was really like, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it truly hit me. I mean, you're in a whole haze this whole time. This last 2 hours, you don't know what the fuck's going on. You're a total mess. It headlined national cable news. And I bet you we put on Channel 4, Channel 2. I mean, that's the New York stations down here, or your stations up there. It would have led there too. This was a huge national story, and not exactly the publicity Vince wanted to have. Devastating. And the reality set in that somebody just died. Somebody that everybody cared about. This wasn't just some jobber. This wasn't like the whole mass transit bleeding thing, at whatever the pay-per-view in ECW was. Or this wasn't, a guy dying in a hotel room. Or this isn't Bruiser Brody in the shower. This is a guy on camera. Not saying that those guys weren't, loved and respected, but this is Owen Hart. You've never heard, ever, even after the pile driver to Steve in 97, never heard a bad thing about Owen Hart, ever. And he died on the show. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, what do you do? And then it's on CNN? Crazy. Absolutely crazy. I remember going to work the next day, and I remember talking to my news director. I was working for the radio station at the time. I was in the news department. And I went in that day, and he's like, he knew I was a wrestling fan. He goes, so what the hell happened? He had no idea. His kid was a wrestling fan, and I had known him from my previous radio job. And I'm like, I read the story, but I know you're a fan. And Kevin, my son, he said, didn't watch it. What happened? And I said, that's what happened. And he's like, why didn't Vince stop the show? And at the time, you don't know what to say. It's sad that at this point, you're right, to not make any light of it whatsoever. What a time of the year for this. What a time in history for this to happen. Not that any time is good.
Though, on the flip side of it, it maybe could have come at a better time for them because they were strong enough to survive it. And if something like this happens in 97, do they survive it? I mean, I know it happened with Pillman, but something on this level.
Right.
When they were in the shape that they were in, do they survive? Right. So maybe in their, not defense, but in their perspective.
Right.
Maybe not the worst time. But it's, I remember a couple weeks later, this Dick, writes for the Providence Journal, Bill Reynolds, still going today, did some article ripping wrestling in general and using this as his reason why basically it should be eradicated. Because obviously everyone dies falling from the rafters in wrestling. Yeah.
Well, Phil Mushnick, same way.
Well, I wrote back and I pulled some rank by name dropping my cousin Frankie, who at the time was doing the cartoons for the Journal. It actually got published in the response, the whatever editor thing. I remember I cut it out. I got to see if my mom still has it. She had it hanging. It's called Reynolds Slam. They titled it. And basically I just ripped them saying, I mean, it never should happen. It was really bad. But to disparage this whole business for that seems a little bit short-sighted. I mean,
well, Phil Mushnick, who's another, and I still don't read him. The guy still is a toad. He writes for the one of the two papers. I think it's the Daily News. Who cares? One of the two papers. Was just, same thing. Just being stupid. He was like this in 97. So, it sucked. What are you going to do,
All right, so let's go to the next night.
The next night on Raw, of course, storylines, everything thrown out the window. Full-blown 2-hour. They were in St. Louis. Full-blown 2-hour tribute. Straight matches. No storylines, no promos, nothing. Straight matches. And backstage sit-down pieces.
And I don't want to talk about or judge. I've seen on many news boards, people saying, was it real? Was it fake? Was it for ratings? Did they have to do it the way they did it? Should they have just showed Owen matches? Did they have to have these people out there crying? Did they have to put them in those spots? I'm not going to get into that because I don't know what they felt or thought or their relationship with Owen. Maybe some were done because they were basically told to do them. Maybe some weren't. I don't know if there's a right way to do it or a wrong way to do it. Did they benefit out of it? I don't know. I don't think so. They were getting good ratings anyway at this point. It's not like they were selling TV shows. So I don't really see that as being a major piece of it.
No, I thought it was fine. I thought there was nothing wrong with it at all.
Well, there are views of people who feel like it. I don't want to say it was forced. I just know that's part of, I think, Martha's contention. They felt like they shouldn't have even done that. I don't know.
Martha was going to be pissed off regardless of what they did, and she had she had every right to. So, and I'm not saying this to be mean, but it's kind of hard to decide what she would have thought was right, because she was just so distraught. Which is, she had every right to be. I mean, it was her husband or father of her children. I don't know what they could have done. Maybe maybe this was a case where Vince sat with everyone and said, "How do you want to do this tonight?" Vince is much more of a diplomat than people think he is, at least from what people have said. And we've had people on our interviews here on our show that have said Vince is more of a diplomat than people think he is.
Well, this is one. I mean, I know we say this a lot, but this is one where I'm really want to see what Kevin has to say. I mean, he was there.
Yeah.
For all this. So, we're speculating and hemming and hawing a lot about what people were thinking, and he may be the guy who can answer it all for us.
There was rumors that there were other things that people were faking their tears and all this other jazz. I mean, seriously? Come on. Faking their tears. I mean, I can understand people saying, I don't know if people should have gone on camera at all, whether it was genuine or not in general. But to go out there and say, people went out there and faked tears because they didn't want to look cold. Whatever. I had no problem with it. And then, of course, the other thing was, of course, the end of the night, Austin came out and, toasted 2 beers, put a beer down in the ring. They had the picture of Owen with the flag and the years on it, and he looked visibly upset and toasted the beers and went off the air.
Now, there's obviously been a lot of consternation about that.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Because many thought, it was classless to have Austin do the beer thing. But, I mean, that was his gimmick. 2, that many felt he never forgave Owen and really wasn't a person that probably should have been out there. What did you... I mean, I thought it was a harmless gesture. I don't think there was any malice to it. I thought Austin's the biggest star. If you don't have him on, it's kind of noticeable. Mm-hmm. His toasting the beer thing, Owen wasn't a big drinker, so that was the big thing at the time. I remember people bitching, Owen's not even a drinker, and they have Austin. That's not what Owen would want. It's like, I mean, that was Austin's thing. He toasted the beer to someone to acknowledge respect to them, and to me, that's what this was supposed to be. So, I mean, of all the things to have an issue with over these 2 days, that to me is not one that we really need to worry about.
Well, remember there was another big, Donnybrook, about why didn't where was Taker? Was it such a big deal to protect Taker's character he couldn't come out? Oh, that was another big one.
And well, his characters were really fucked at this point.
Yeah. So yeah. I had no problem with it. I thought the show was fine. Very respectful. I think it's on. I think we have it on our tape. Somebody mentioned
on the same tape.
What's that?
I have both on the same tape.
Yeah. So it must be the same thing I have. Obviously. There's people. I think it was eBay today. Obviously, there's never been a version of this. A, there's never been a version of this tape out. B, of course, they never used the title Over the Edge again. That's gone. And they don't go back to. I don't know about Raws, but I know they don't go back to Kansas City for pay-per-view.
Yeah, they've definitely had Raws there.
Yeah, so they didn't go back to Kansas City on pay-per-view for 3 years.
No,
next time they were in that building was Backlash 2002.
Yeah, they didn't go back for Raw that year. But that was already probably predetermined. I'm sure they were booked out. But WCW would go back to the next year and be the assholes that they were. They could not stay out of controversy for too long because they go out and that was the infamous where Canyon gets thrown off the super steel cage.
Mm-hmm.
And you wonder what they were thinking, in that arena to have a guy get thrown off a cage through a stage.
Yeah. Now, of course, they went back. They were in that building. They were booked for a Nitro, of course, later that year. And, of course, they had that legendary match between Bret Hart and Chris Benoit. Yeah. So, so the show is the show, but let's take the 4. JR, your just overall thoughts on Owen Hart in general.
Yeah, I mean, just one of... They actually went back to Kemper for a house show, August 24th.
Oh, okay.
Actually, no, it was a SmackDown. The premiere of SmackDown was there.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that I don't remember. Wow.
Okay.
And that was... I think that was a week after SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. So Owen, I mean, one of my favorites, one of the greats. I remember loving him as soon as he turned heel. I didn't mind him as a face, but as soon as he turned heel, I was all in on the Owen train. Loved him throughout '94, the whole feud with Bret, all the stuff with Bulldog. Loved all the shit with the Hartford Nation 97. It's too bad what happened with Montreal really took him out of the game pretty much as a player. And this last year and a half was just kind of meandering around. He had a good match and feud here and there, but as any kind of legitimate star, he was pretty much done.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite moments was the interview with him and Pillman at Mind Games. And, of course, the one we've talked about on Raw with him and Pillman arguing with Gorilla to try and get Pillman in his corner. We've talked about that before.
Yep.
And the double take, him and Bulldog do it, Revenge the Taker, when they beat up Austin in the back and then they get caught on camera and they scamper off. All that stuff was great. And, of course, the slammy stuff was cool, too.
And, of course, his commentating at the 96
Oh, yeah. Yep. The hose beast and everything else.
They should be back. They should be back. What is he, knitting me a sweater or baking me a cake or something? Something like that.
I mean, it is a true throwback heel. It wasn't out there to be cool. He was fine being the dork and the just old school heat getter. And match is always awesome to watch. Some of the best matches in WWF history put on by Owen Hart. And there's the match against Bret at WrestleMania, the tag match with the Hart brothers against the Steiners, Rumble '94 against the Quebecers, one of my favorite matches I've ever seen live. Match with Bulldog and for the European title, the vacant title. Just great matches, tons of great matches. SummerSlam cage match. And, he'll always have a special part in wrestling history. And it's, you hope one day they'll put him in the Hall of Fame. They can come to that agreement and get him in there where he belongs so he can be honored. And I cannot believe it's already been 14 years since this happened. It's crazy he's been gone that long. So, just a terrible tragedy that night. Something you hate to have to relive. And, we did it tonight. And, Scott, I want to commend you because I think we did it as well as it could maybe be done. Anyway, I hope everyone feels that way. I do.
I certainly do as well. And an exceptional job by you, JR. You handled all angles. This is a tough subject to talk about. Again, 14 years, it's still very hard. A lot of people have very raw opinions of it. You could very easily say anybody who thinks the show should have continued is cold. It's easy to make any blanket statement, whether it's morally or financially incorrect or correct. I got to be honest. I didn't really appreciate Owen until '97. I wasn't watching a lot of WWF in the mid '90s. I watched more WCW, so I remember watching a lot of the '94, '95 stuff after the fact, but still really appreciated it. I loved his feud with Steve. I hated what happened with the pile driver. It was an unfortunate accident. And I think in the beginning, I know there was a lot of tension, but I'm sure. Even Bret said to Owen, you were wrong for not saying something, and I'm sure they did eventually. He was just a great worker. He was loyal. You felt bad for him at the end, and I did at the end of '97 that he got stuck there. And
I know Bret has said, that was one of his regrets, looking back, that he wishes he could have got him out and probably saved his life.
Yeah. His final record, and normally nobody cares, but I'm going to say it. We have it on we have a nice, by the way, we did a write-up of just Owen.
Yeah.
On our board, bigelow34.proboards.com.
And it's a thread for any of you guys to share. We didn't put a feedback thread up just because of the topic, and but there is a thread on the board under the 1999 section of our reviews just dedicated to Owen, and a lot of people have already chimed in there, so you can kind of share Owen thoughts there as well.
Yep. Not counting Rumbles. We're not counting actual Rumbles. And normally no one cares about records in a situation like this, but I'm saying it as a compliment to him. 28, 19, and 1. That's great. That's great. 1-1 at the Rumble, not counting the Rumbles themselves. He lost all 7 he was in. 5, 2, and 1 at WrestleMania. That's pretty good.
Yep.
4 and 1 at King of the Ring, including 1 King win. 1 and 3 at SummerSlam. 2 and 5 at Survivor Series. 3 and 2 at actual In Your Houses. The actual In Your Houses, 1 through 6. 12 and 5 at everything else. Pretty good.
Yeah.
2 Intercontinental titles, 4 tag team titles, 1 European title, and a King of the Ring.
No, very decorated career, and was treated well for a while until Montreal went down. And a guy that, if you were watching in the mid-'90s like I was during some of the down times, a guy you could really look to always provide entertainment and a good match, and one of the guys you could really get into. And, of course, one of his best performances as well, Survivor Series 94 with the Backlund Brett submission match.
Yep.
So, all right, why don't we wrap there, Scott? There's your Over the Edge 99, Owen Hart, look back. Hope, again, everyone was okay with this. We decided to go forward with it. We had enough people saying they wanted us to, that we felt it was okay to talk about. It's been long enough, and to put it into perspective and look at the angle. So we'll be back to normal on Wednesday night with King of the Ring 99. Back to the usual Vintage Vault stylings. Sunday night, we will be interviewing the one and only, the great Diamond Dallas Page. Not sure when that'll be posted, but it will be sometime early next week, if not Sunday night itself. Hopefully, we're going to have Kevin Kelly on as well next week, trying to get a hold of him to talk about early 99, and we're undecided yet how that rest of the week's going to go, so we gotta figure some stuff out. There'll either be 2 or 3 episodes, but there'll definitely be at least 2. We're hoping it's DDP and Kevin, and then we'll see if we get a third one in. But for now, we'll be back Wednesday with King of the Ring 99. Until then, that is Scott Criscolo. I am Justin Rosero, and remember, tomorrow night, depending on when you're listening to this, Tuesday, April 30th at 8 p.m., bigelow34.proboards.com message board, the trivia thread will be posted. This is your chance to be one of the first 30 entrants in to go along with Dave Paul and Jay Hinchy to be part of the second annual PTB Trivia Tournament. If you want to hear all the rules, you can go back and listen to our last episode. We broke them down very thoroughly for you. So make sure you do that, check that out, and make sure you get involved. So again, that'll be posted April 30th, 8 p.m. The thread will open, and you can get in there and sign up for the tournament. So for Scott, I am Justin. We'll talk to you, PTB Nation, Wednesday night. Take care.
Peace.